Hello and welcome to the Speaking Frankly Football Show. I'm Frank Hughes, the chairman of Skelmersdale United Football Club, and alongside me is my co-host and passionate press officer AJ Vidget. Not that being involved with the football club is a prerequisite for hosting a football podcast, but it certainly helps. We are ready to dive headfirst into the vibrant world of non-league football in the Northwest, and we might even take a moment to discuss some of the bigger headlines in the sport. We'll explore life in the Northwest counties, bring you interviews with well-known faces in the league, and analyse how local teams are performing while making bold predictions for their upcoming matches. Nothing is off the limits here. We'll be diving into all kinds of topics, including complicated refereeing decisions and regulations that often leave fans perplexed. We want to hear from you too. This is your show, so don't hesitate to reach out with topics you want us to tackle. Let's get this conversation started and enjoy every single moment. We are speaking frankly. Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of the Speaking Frankly Football Show, and a warm welcome to my co-host AJ Vidget.
Hello Frank, hello everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to the latest episode, as Frank says, number 16 of the Speaking Frankly Football Show. We will be delving into Rushall Olympic and sustainability in football. We will be delving into 3G pitches, YouTubers taking over Northwest Counties teams, and we are going to go once again to, yes, you guessed it, Farsley Celtic. But first,
listen, it's hard to believe that we keep revisiting these stories, but they are the stories that keep on.
It is a soap opera all of its own over there in Yorkshire.
It is, and listen, the landscape of non-league football, it stays pretty much the same. It's the probably the name of the clubs changes, but the narrative is the same. We will come to the sustainability in football, but we'll round up the Northwest Counties and the last week's results.
Yes, we will.
And we're thinking about Bury Football Club and the sort of just before the Christmas period when they got knocked out of the FA Cup, was it?
Yeah.
They got knocked out of the FA Cup and they lost a couple of games and everybody was on the back of Dave McNabb. And then just looking at it there, they're quietly going about the business and, you know, they've scored over 100 goals. They've only lost 3 games in the league all season. I know there's still a lot of hard work to be done, but this is a fabulous run they're on now, isn't it?
6 consecutive victories. I think just 1 game lost in the last 13. They've beaten West Didsbury and Chorlton on the Saturday just gone by 2 goals to 1 in front of a sort of capacity crowd, really. 3,724, 2 big supported clubs within the Northwest Premier, converging on Gig Lane to watch it. It was a really, really good game by all accounts, very tight, and in the end it was DJ Pedro once again that was the difference between Bury winning and Bury drawing. 75th minute penalty securing them all 3 points there.
Like you said, they've lost 1 game in the last 13 league games.
Silly that, isn't it?
And that defeat was against West Didsbury back in January, so they've managed to exact revenge by beating them, as you say, on Saturday, so that was a good win for them. But
very much so.
Ramsbottom are still breathing down the necks.
They are. So Ramsbottom weren't in action this weekend in the league. They did play in the Macron Cup.
Well, should we look at the Macron Cup then?
We will, yeah, sure.
Obviously, we expected. I think a lot of our predictions went a bit wayward there, didn't they? Because I think the only club that didn't surprise us. Let's think who it was.
I think it was Charnock Richard against Maghull. I think that was the one that we sort of quietly, confidently predicted would go that way. But I think otherwise we sort of clean swept the Northwest Counties Premier against the Northwest Counties Division 1s. So Chadderton played AFC Blackpool and contested a 4-4 draw where AFC Blackpool were at one point 4-1 up with 16 minutes to go.
How many times has that happened this season? It's been a few.
They've conspired to chuck away leads, but like we say, they are sort of very high scoring in their own right. But I think that's probably one of the first times that their defence has really truly been exposed multiple times over within the same game.
Good team though, AFC Blackpool.
Oh yeah, very very good team.
Free scoring.
Pretty much, yeah, very attack minded there. But Chatterton managed to take the game to penalties, whereby AFC Blackpool did emerge victorious by 4 successful penalties to 3 over Chatterton. So they will move into the Macron Cup semi-finals. Brilliant.
And I think the draw's taking place but I've not spotted what it is. But anyway, listen, Charnock, as you say, battered McGull 5-1. No great surprise there.
No.
We predicted that one.
Yeah, we did predict that one. I don't think we thought it would be quite that convincing.
No.
And I think that probably says more about how Charnock Richard have faced this game, really. They're probably looking at this as their real big shot for silverware. Yeah. They're outsiders to make the playoffs of the Premier Division. I'm not sure how well they'll fare. I think they're sitting about 9th at the minute. But winning the Macron Cup would almost certainly, tinge the season with some cheer.
So we know Ramsbottom, one eye on the league.
Yes.
Obviously, probably 1.5 eyes on the league, to be fair.
Yeah.
So there was no surprise really. We expected Ramsbottom to win, but we did think, it could possibly go Stafford's way as well, which it did, and they managed to win 2-1, but they left it really, really late.
Oh, they did, didn't they? I mean, Stafford 1-0 down with 6 minutes to go. Jaden Hunter grabs an equaliser, and then in the 95th minute, Scott Wilding grabs their winner, and then they're through to the semi-finals. Interestingly enough, though, Stafford are a team who you think have got 1.5 eyes on promotion as well. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I think, as far as Ramsbottom are concerned. They can either take on a really, really difficult team in Stafford with looking to silverware, but Stafford have got the same problem. So could Stafford's gamble in the Macron Cup mean the end of their automatic promotion hopes? We can only see.
Yeah, listen, well, I wouldn't be surprised. But let's move on to the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. So
you've already mentioned the Bury victory over West Didsbury.
We did, yeah. Cone lost 2-0 at home to Stockport Town, which was a result I don't think either of us really called. I think you called a Cone win and I called a draw. I haven't got my predictions in front of me.
I'm trying to dig it out, to be honest with you. But you said I didn't.
You got 16 out of the full weekend.
16 out of 28.
Very good result. I'll post mine on X a bit later when I find the paperwork, or go back over the pod and compare it properly. But Colne versus Stockport is not a result that either of us called accurately. 2-0 win for Stockport there, in front of a decent turnout, actually, as far as Colne are concerned. 170 fans packed in there.
Not bad at all.
Not at all. Barnoldswick continued their good run recently with a solid 1-1 draw away at the FC Isle of Man. They took the lead after 15 minutes, but FC Isle of Man equalised just before the hour mark, and therein it played out to a 1-1 draw. 593 turning out at the bowl for that one. It's a little drop in attendance there from I think the FC Isle of Man.
Yeah, the sort of mid-table
realisation it's there, isn't it?
I suppose the support sort of dwindles away a little bit. But
it's been speculated that the bowl doesn't have an alcohol licence, and I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Oh, right. I'm just trying to think back when we went there last season.
Yeah, there was a...
I didn't drink. I don't drink at the actually during the games, but
no.
I thought they had an outdoor bar, but unless that's changed, I don't know.
Maybe. FC St Helens lost at home to Citadel Town. Now they did play 3 days later against Longridge Town and beat them 3-0 in front of 112 fans, which isn't bad at all for a midweek game.
No.
Actually, Tom Smith, former Skem lad, getting on the score sheet there with his, I think, 4th goal of the season, something like that. So
he seems to be doing relatively well, doesn't he?
He's finding his feet over there at St Helens. Fair play to him.
Yeah. Helm, they beat AFC Liverpool. Yet again, another team that's form can't stick. It's topsy-turvy, to say the least.
Very much so, but Earlham have got one of those really impressive home forms. I think they've only lost 1 or 2 games at home all season. It's sort of silly numbers when you look at it, really, and not a bad turnout. 145. Getting a win in the 76th minute of the game.
And Earlham is second in the form league anyway, so no great surprise there. But Litherland Remarkably versus Glossop North End.
A 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw, yeah. Now, I've spoke to, obviously, they got back in the game, and the 2 late goals, really. 79th minute, Remarkably took the lead, and Glossop North End have managed to get back on level terms in the 83rd minute. Oliver Mackay has scored the equaliser there. Richard Brodie basically said yes in the end. It felt like a bit of a win, really. Because you get that late in the game and you think it's going away from you.
Yeah, you do.
And just on Richard Brodie, he made his debut as a co-commentator for BBC Radio York.
Is that over at York, wasn't it? I heard about that.
It was he went all the way. He was due to do it earlier on in the season, but the fixture list got changed, which meant he couldn't commentate on the previous game that he was originally lined up for. But he ended up going down to Barnet on Tuesday night, all expenses paid trip, I believe, and he did a great job. I listened to the commentary and did absolutely smashed it, to be perfectly honest with you. Sound like it's season pro.
Was he better than me?
Think carefully. How can I say that? You're both friends, you're both as good as each other.
The thing is, he's doing it for the BBC.
He's doing it for the BBC. He's step up. But as we know, he's a hero. He's almost got godlike status at York.
Yeah,
as most strikers or ex-strikers do at any football club. So
I've got celebrated status in Skem.
Of course you are. Of course you have. I don't know what we're celebrating, mate.
Shut up. When BBC Radio Skelmersdale launches, who'll be running the flagship sports programme.
Listen, you've been doing a very good job, by the way. I mean, you can't take it for granted. The fact is, it's a difficult thing to submerge yourself into when you've not done it before, and you're absolutely smashing it. And I'm not just saying that because I've just been very complimentary towards Richard Brodie.
Well, I think that would probably be complimentary towards Richard Brodie. He's a lovely chap, and we deeply enjoy having him on the show.
Yeah, most definitely. So
anyway,
moving back to the... I've lost all my paperwork. I've lost the order of my paperwork.
Well, Padiham lost again. We had them as being sort of late runners for the promotion and playoff spots, because they had about 5 or 6 games in hand on the teams above them. Now they're slowly running out of games to find their form. So they've matched Lower Breck in 3rd for the number of games played at 34. Now there are teams above them who've played 35, 36, 37. So they aren't out of it just yet. But Jack Anderton scored for Longridge in the first minute of the game, and therein they held out. Padiham losing 1-0. I think that was their second successive loss on the spin, so they are going to need to address that sooner rather than later if they are thinking about making that break for the playoffs. Yeah, this was the other one, is they lost 2-0 at home again to Barnoldswick, conceding first in the 8th minute of the game. So there's a bit of a topsy-turvy there in terms of just conceding early. But,
I have a theory and absolutely no proof to back it up whatsoever, but I often wonder when a team gets back in contention, then all of a sudden they hit a blip in form. It makes you wonder whether they actually want to get promoted. I don't know. Listen, I would imagine every team that's competitive enough wants to get promotion. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that's the case, but I created a new terminology last week, didn't I? Twitchy bum time.
You did, yes.
And Kate Maggie, she highlighted the fact that it's Well, she laughed about it, basically,
She
didn't
did,
she?
yes.
As we know, it is squeaky bum time, but I'm going to carry on calling twitchy bum time, and maybe that's the case with Padium now. They're suffering with twitchy bum syndrome.
Twitchy bum syndrome, yeah. Well, Skem suffered with enough of twitchy bum syndrome at the weekend, which we'll come to in just a moment.
In due course, yeah. So Prestwich Hayes, Pilkingtons.
2-2 draw, 92nd minute equaliser from Ryan Bagan of Pilk, salvaging a point there against Prestwich, who could have really done with those 3 points to get them further away from the bottom of the league. They are still third bottom by virtue of goal difference. Really, their goal difference is the only thing keeping them off the bottom, but it's really tight down there between Prestwich and Squires Gate, who...
I'd say it's a good point for Pilks, though, isn't it?
I think it's a reasonable...
In terms of the position they're in as well.
Yeah, so it stretches Pilk's position away from the bottom of the league to 5 points now, having played a game less than Squires Gate. So they can probably look back on that and breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, but they can't take anything for granted at this stage in the season.
Most definitely. So South Liverpool, Abbey Hay, absolute
big winners.
battering.
Big winners there, yes. Yeah. Abbey Hay 6-1 away at South Liverpool. 6 different scorers on the day, which is not something you see very often, but just free scoring from the minute they opened the floodgates in the 18th minute and just kept going and going and going. South Liverpool nicking one in the 85th minute as a mere consolation. And then we head over to Blackpool, where Squires Gate finally got another point on the board at home to Burscough.
Well, we know Dave Dempsey was really, really disappointed there because they managed to get a goal in the 80th minute and they couldn't hold on long enough, and Charlie Cox has got an equaliser 2 minutes before time.
Yeah, he has. That's really put the cat amongst the pigeons again as far as the relegation battle is concerned. We did think that Squires Gate were in free fall, but they've sort of arrested that a little bit. I wonder whether it's just a blip, if you like, but it's their third draw in a row, so they are unbeaten in 3, to say the least. But it's probably a good time to turn it around.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've forgotten to mention, by the way, in the Macron Cup quarterfinals, because it was played last Friday, so I don't want to overlook this, but Barnton beat Lower Breck 3-2. That was another score that went the opposite way to what we thought.
Division 1 strikes again.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, but maybe Lower Breck still got outside aspirations of winning the...
Yeah, I mean, they are right in the thick of it as far as the playoff is concerned. So
yeah, they've still got a chance, haven't they?
They certainly do. So,
sorry to have gone off.
Yeah.
But that was a good result.
Yes.
For Barnton, well done to them. So we move on to the Division 1 South, because we normally go to the South first, don't we?
We do, yep. So it's...
not that I can find it, but
shift south.
We'll try our best.
Well, there weren't an awful lot of games being played. I think there was only about 6 or something like that one. So Asheville versus Olscott Heath was a 4-2 win for the home side there. The floodgates of entertainment really opening in the second half, where out of the 6 goals, 5 were scored in the second half. So very much a topsy-turvy game where any team could have really won it until about 5 minutes from time when Asheville scored their 4th. So Stockport Georgians beat Cheadle Heath Nomads 2-0 in the local derby there. I don't know if we anticipated that one. I think I had Cheadle Heath Nomads to win. They are sort of trying to contest a bit of a playoff spot. Stockport Georgians very much kind of middle of the park, if you like. So that's a very decent result there for the Georgians.
Well, I went for Cheadle Heath Nomads.
There you go.
Yeah, I was expecting that to go their way, but it didn't. Eccleshall or Ecclesall 2-0 to them. I think we predicted that correctly, didn't we?
Yeah.
Runcorn, Market Drayton. I think we both got that one wrong, didn't we?
Yeah, I think I called Runcorn. I'm sure you may have done as well. But yeah, I mean, given Runcorn's run of form recently compared with Market Drayton's sort of eyebrow-raising run of form, if you like, we would have thought the home side would have 3 points. But it was a 1-1 draw in quite horrendous conditions.
Yeah, well, we're going to speak to Dan Dawson, the manager of Market Drayton, in the second part of the show and get his thoughts on that game. I think it was a good point for them away from home.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Runcorn very sort of resurgent type season, haven't they?
Yes,
since the new management duo took over.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point for them.
Very much so. So Sandbach United playing out a 2-0 win against Farsley Mere, probably business as usual for them, if you like. You know, they are on a bit of a hot streak. 222 turning out at the Sandbach Community Stadium for that one. So
nice little setup there.
Have you been?
Yeah, I went to the FA Youth Cup game against...
Right.
Did we play Sandbach? Yeah, must have played Sandbach there, yeah. We beat them comfortably.
You're kidding. Oh, that's amazing, that.
Yeah.
It's Abbey Hulton, another sort of heavyweight of the Southern Division, beat Shawbury United 2-1 away from home. Shawbury starting to...
Tighter than expected.
Tighter than I thought. I think we both had Abbey Hulton winning that at a canter. They had to come from behind though. Mark Stallard giving Shawbury the lead after near enough 20 minutes, and then until the second half Abbey Hulton managed to equalise in the first minute of the second half and then grab a game-winning goal with 10 minutes to go.
It'd be interesting to get Dan's perspective on Abbey Hulton, because they the surprise package of the...
They certainly are. Yeah, they've had a bit of a turnaround, a bit of a rebuild, if you like. So a lot of good players sort of coming down into Step 6 here. So interesting to see what he makes of them. And then Winsford United pressing their own claims to win the Division 1 South title with a 4-1 win over Camel Laird 1907. The home side comfortably in the driver's seat, 2-0 up at half time. An own goal made things a little bit interesting in the second half, but then 2 further goals from Winsford, securing them all 3 points in front of 262 fans down in South Warrington.
So, albeit that stretched their lead to 9 points, Stafford still have 2 games in hand, so it's not over by
not by any
stretch of the imagination.
No. And I think we need to take into account Sandbach sort of continuing to be the dark horses here. You know, they've played 2 more games than Stafford, but they are only a point behind them and 10 points behind Winsford, so they could do something.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a long shot, but I think if you ask any Sandbach fan, player, associate, they'll tell you they can do it. Yeah.
So, listen, we'll move on to the Division 1 North.
Yes.
And we'll talk about us at the very last part of it, but let's talk about... There's no particular shocks other than the biggest shock is, and it's not a shock really, but Exton Villa beating Atherton LR at Atherton LR. I think
I was shocked.
You were shocked, yeah.
I was shocked, yeah.
The capable Exton. So I wasn't totally sure. It looks as though it was a relatively easy win for Exton, but I don't know. Purely based on the fact that it was a late goal by Atherton LR, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that got them back in the game.
It was. Yeah, I think they got their consolation goal with
93rd minute, wasn't
it? Something like that one. So you could probably say that Exton had sort of reasonable control once they went 2-0 up. You know, they were 2-0 up early in the first half, so that gives Atherton LR a mountain to climb already, and I think Exton have just done a really professional stifling job over Atherton LR. We've said it before, is that Atherton aren't exactly free scoring. You know, they're not big scorers in the same way that a Bury are or a Winsford are. Their premise is built out of a rock solid defence, and with that being breached twice so early on, it was always going to be difficult.
So a Charlie Frost hat-trick for Nelson took all the points at Ashton Athletic. They beat them 3-1.
He's silly good, him, is Charlie Frost. He's got 30 goals in 30 games.
Yeah, what a great name.
Charlie Frost. Yeah.
Some headlines with them ones, isn't there?
You absolutely could. That is
names.
that is the name of a character in the Jack Frost movie. So if you are going to use any kind of puns or something like that, make sure it is snowman related. Declan Hill getting on the score sheet for Ashton Athletic, as he has so consistently done over the entire season. I think that was his 19th goal of the campaign. So well done to him. And let me see what else. So Thornton Cleveland's played out against Darwin, and Darwin the victors on the day in the 94th minute penalty from Connor Hughes, securing them all 3 points.
Yeah. But we're looking at Bacup Borough, Ashton Town. Ashton Town continuing that reasonably good run of success at the moment.
Yeah, they are. So
it was a 1-1 draw in the end. 2-2 draw at Bacup.
It was a 2-2 draw in the end. I didn't call that. I'm not sure you did either.
No,
I thought Ashton were going to win that one, but in fact they had to do it the hard way. They were 2-0 down after half an hour, but George Lomax, sort of, I won't say predictably, but one of the
he knows where the net is.
He does, absolutely. I think that was sort of his 14th, 15th of the campaign. He's got a good goal scoring run of late, so he got them back on the back on track, and then William Hamilton getting the equaliser after an hour, and therein it stayed.
Yeah. So moving on to Holker, no surprise there. They beat Steeton 2-0.
Very
good win for them
job.
at home.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
difficult place to go and play anyway.
Yeah, it's not nice.
Main Road 1, Daisy Hill 1.
I don't know if
we're going to talk about Daisy Hill again.
We'll call that
soon, so we'll talk about them later.
Yes,
but,
we will.
Yeah, listen, that's a decent draw for them away from home.
I think so. I know Main Road are on a bit of a...
Oh, they're doing terrible at the moment, aren't they?
They're not doing brilliant, but they did manage to get an equaliser with a minute to go after Daisy Hill had held the lead for so long. But I think Daisy Hill's difficulty at the minute is scoring. It would seem, they've not had an awful lot of good form in front of goal of late.
Too early to say the Aaron Hunt effect is...
It ain't there just yet. However, he...
We'll come to that, won't we?
Fine.
We'll come to that, yeah.
I'm just getting excited.
Yeah, so am I.
It's okay.
Route 1 Rovers versus Droylsden. No surprise there. Droylsden went away with a 3-1 win there.
Yeah, they did.
Well, that looks a bit more flattering than it actually was, because they've scored a 97th minute goal, Droylsden, to make the scoreline look a little bit more flattering.
I think so.
But listen, we'll go to the final one before we go to ours, and of course, where are we?
So Thornton Cleveland's playing out against Darwin FC. As I say, Thornton Cleveland's took the lead after 10 minutes, but then Bruno Severino managing to equalise after an hour, and then Connor Hughes with a 94th minute penalty to secure 3 points for Darwin.
So does that leave the very final game in
Yes,
that
it
section?
does. Yes, it does.
Are we coming to the good bit?
Yeah. Tell them what happened, Frank.
Right, okay. Well, listen, let's create the headline first, right? What was it now? Float like McNally, sting like Sam Summerby.
Yes.
And now, I think that's a cracking headline.
Yes,
obviously, it didn't manage to get in the papers.
It didn't. It was swiftly rejected by the editor. But it does not change the result.
So I mean, how would you sum up the result? I mean, listen, it was a fantastic win, and we embrace any win, and we celebrate it in masses. It was like winning the World Cup, wasn't it?
We might as well have done. The boot pint glasses were out. The music was absolutely flooding. The players had the boombox turned on once they'd got into the changing rooms. It was all going off at the community ground.
So, what would you say? It was probably the most balanced performance of the season, and even take into that Main Road, that was a fabulous win, but this was slightly different, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah. So there's this sort of balances 2 and 4 really. So the one thing about the Garstang win against us that didn't happen at Main Road is that we were broken down from open play. Now, it does help when Garstang managed to secure a couple of boys from the Premier Division via, I think it was either Barnoldswick or it was Longridge. One of those two teams is where the goal scorer for Garstang came from. He made his debut. He was introduced off the bench after about 60-65 minutes and scored the equaliser for Garstang from open play, which didn't happen at Main Road. But on the flip side of it is that we were really creative in how we went about our attacks. So time was that we kind of play a bit of Route 1 football, if you like, long ball, just kind of searching out, a run off the striker's shoulder or looking for somebody to take it on their chest and turn.
We're far more composed.
We were really composed, and I think a lot of it was down to was being allowed to play football.
Yeah.
We allowed ourselves to play football. We didn't let ourselves be rushed. We knocked it about patiently, and we had an awful lot of success down the channels. Yeah.
And having two left footers on the left hand side of the pitch helped tremendously as well.
That was invaluable. Yeah, having Sheikh do his thing on the left wing. He was fantastic for
I think his delivery, the free kicks and the corner kicks were outstanding.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Something that we've been missing, to be fair.
Very much so, yeah. But that corner that led to the equaliser was pinpoint for Harry Middlehurst's head. He didn't score, but Ryan did.
That was the first goal.
It was a terrific delivery by Sheikh. We're pleased to have him.
Yeah, and we celebrated way into the night.
Yes, we did. Yeah,
and even Everton managed to win as well.
They did. Yeah, so
it was like a double bubble for me.
It was really very much a double bubble for you. Yeah. So, but I mean, even when we conceded, we kept going, and I think we've shown a.
Is it right the score in there though? It's got down 81 minutes for both goals. What was the score?
It's not. What? So. It has been officially claimed to be the 81st minute. It was more like the 75th when they equalised. Yeah, I think our goal scoring in the second, the 81st minute. That's correct. Their goal scoring was about the 75th.
Yeah, I did think there was a reasonable gap between.
Yeah. There was. It wasn't like we took a breath and then Sam Summerby sort of arrowed it in for 25 yards to put us back in front. But interestingly enough, in every single game where we've picked up points, we have either had to come from behind or we've surrendered the lead.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
It's a really interesting fact when you consider that we've got to look for points anywhere we can, but it also shows an immense mental fortitude from this team to keep on scrapping when we've been pegged back.
And I think we've said it before, haven't we? We do feel as though we finish these games a lot stronger. We're fit enough. There's no doubt about that. We're fit enough.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a couple of the boys are coming back from injury. Ryan's just making his second or third appearance into long-term injury. Sheikh's been off for a few games. Jason Clark, Brogan Clark, players that we could normally rely on to empty the tank after 90 minutes. Probably missing just that little bit of edge of match fitness. Yeah. But I mean, barely showing it. The composure, the running, everything was there, and we were playing really attractive football. Sort of pulling together sort of 6-7 passing moves, and then playing Luca Boone in, or when Toby Taylor came off the bench, he was holding up the play really well and allowing overlapping runs from Alex Priestley and Jack Grimshaw. Everything just kind of came together in gifts and spurts there.
And it's worth mentioning that we had to play the last 10 minutes of the game without Luca, who the first sin bin of the season.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen or heard from a sin binning at our level. That's certainly the first one I've experienced.
No.
Yeah, I think it's something that Luca will learn from, and I think we were probably quite fortunate that it didn't affect us massively either by putting the game to bed or by conceding an equaliser. We did what we had to do to get the win.
Yeah, and I think it's been said before, it doesn't matter how many men you go down to, you still have that job of having to defend come what may. You've still got your defence there, haven't you? It wasn't a defender that went off.
No, we
You know what I
were
mean?
we were very lucky that we were able to retain our defence, our four-man defence for the entire 90 minutes, and it looked very steadfast, didn't it? You know, Harry grew into his own. He was winning everything, you know, on the air and on the ground. You know, having Jason back was enormous for him. I think those two is a very
I think defensively we were really compact, and I think that took the pressure off Joe in goal as well, because he's been under an awful lot of pressure.
Got to talk about that save
recently. Well, I was going to come to that. The save in itself. Looking at the VO, I don't know how much of that ball he can actually see, and I've not really asked him the question.
Me
but
neither.
He couldn't have seen a great deal of it.
No, I mean it was curled off from a really crowded area. You know, the ball had just come in from a deep throw in, so you know it was very congested.
But a textbook save.
He sprung across. I mean,
Jordan Pickford-esque.
Possibly Jordan Pickford. Yeah, absolutely. He sprung across, and it was going right in that top corner as well. It wasn't even as though you'd be expected to reach that. I mean, he had to reach that. And
I was already crying.
Were you?
Oh yeah, I thought it was in there.
Did
That was me, Spence. I was off. I was going to cry. I was going to go into a dark corner and not speak to anybody for the next week.
Oh, I'd rather you didn't do that. But no, thanks, Joe, for saving Frank on that score. And that really did secure us the 3 points in the end.
And the atmosphere in the clubhouse after the game was marvellous, like you say. Well, we talk about Joe Langford's save was outstanding, and obviously he won the man of the match.
Yeah, he did.
But he couldn't drink the jug of ale, the boot of ale. So we had to give that honour to Toby Taylor, who was already sitting there with the pint at the time, and he took on the task because Joe is totally teetotal. He wouldn't even take a sip. Nope. So Toby did the honours for us. By the time he'd sunk the pint, he looked a bit tipsy, to be honest with you.
Yes, I think he did, yeah. I mean, he'll learn. He'll grow. He'll grow. He's only young.
But it was a bit like old school. I was like, this is great, this. Somebody's having a drink, even if Joe wasn't. Like, somebody was taking on the...
A lot of them were. You know, Sam Summerby's a drinker. You know,
I did think of doing it myself, you know.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't.
I thought, I'll sink it for you, but then I thought, no, I'm driving, so I can't do that, can I?
I would rather you didn't. I thought Alex was going to get up and sink it, to be honest. He did look like he was going...
Well, if he's anything like his dad, he would. Phil, listen, we need to get Phil on the show sometime now. He can tell a story or two. Who would you say was your man of the match overall? A difficult one in the end because there were so many good performances.
It really is. Yeah, I think Joe did extremely well. You know, I think he commanded his box better than he's done for a while. You know, he made great judgment in coming out and getting balls kind of on the edges of his box. His distribution was there today. You know, he did so much right, and I think everything stacked up for him that he was able to grow. For me personally, just because of how much he's grown since this season, and you know, he probably won't thank me for saying this, but he didn't have his best game against Steaton 2 weeks ago. But he's grown from that. Put him back on the wing where he's more comfortable. Alex Priestley was my man of the match.
Alex Priestley was fantastic.
Still going after 90 minutes. He could have had his own goal himself. You know, that through ball. Had it not tagged him on the back of his heel, he'd have been through, and I've no doubt he would have finished that.
He's a genuinely honest player, and I think the fact that he's been played out of position so often, and he's done a job for the squad. He's took one for the boys. He was playing in his natural position.
Yes, he was.
He looked the part. But there were some big performances. From my perspective, I thought Jack Grimshaw, he's 8 out of...
back, that's
stunning. Absolutely stunning. 8 out of 10 every week in terms of effort. Yes. I think Sam Summerby was excellent. Sheik, we've already mentioned Sheik. Sheik was outstanding.
Yeah, he was.
But you could throw a pile of players into there. Luca Boone just does not stop, does he?
No, he doesn't. He was constant menace all over the place, wasn't he? And even when he wasn't getting into goal-scoring positions himself, he was fashioning chances for his teammates. And in fact, it was his cross that led to our winning goal as well.
And an exciting one for the future, I think, is Toby Taylor. He only come on for
20 minutes.
20 minutes or something like that, and held the ball up really well, gave us something different and unique towards the rest of that game.
Yeah.
And I think he's definitely one for the future.
Very much so.
Tommy won't forgive me for saying that on the podcast, because we don't want to alert people to
let's get
the fact that he's such a good player. But
we want money for him if anyone's coming.
Yeah, £50,000. Starting at £50,000. But yeah, listen, fantastic. It was great, and I know people argue the toss and say, well, Cranky Frankie thinks we won the World Cup, but you know what? If you can't celebrate listen, we've had to put up with the misery of losing week in, week out. We don't apologise for celebrating the victories.
Damn straight.
And it was just a good performance.
Yeah, it was.
Great performance. But listen, fantastic. That rounds up the Northwest counties. In this section, we'll obviously look at our expert analysis at the end of the show and our predictions for the coming week. But now we go back into the sort of more controversial issues and sustainability in football.
Yeah. So this one's come from Rushall Olympic in the northern. Are they in the Northern Prem?
They're in the National League North.
National League North. Thank you. So. Rushall Olympic, their chairman, John Allen, said in part of his statement last week, "As a proud chairman who's been involved with Rushall Olympic with my family for over 28 years, I feel that it's the right time for a dose of reality that our finances and considerable goodwill will not be enough for Rushall Olympic to survive, compete and progress at our current level in the Vanarama National League North." Now, we've talked about natural levels in football and how many teams are competing at a level that isn't really sustainable unless you've got the rich backing of a chairman or an owner. Yeah. We've seen it with Marine, we've seen it with Farsley Celtic, we've seen it with Bamber Bridge football.
Well, you can look at the table, can't you? Because I think we've got the.
Yeah, it's right here. So Rushall Olympic are 22nd in the National League North out of 24 teams, and by virtue only of a single point are they not bottom. Which does tell you a little bit of what you need to know. They are struggling to kind of financially compete with the big teams, if you like, of the division. So Scunthorpe United are sitting sort of second top. Chester are top. Teams with big followings, big crowds, big buy-ins, if you like. So next to them, Rushall are sort of seeing the struggle really.
But listen, they've obviously been reasonably successful to get to that level in the first place. But it is a different ball game when you move up. We've looked at Marine, we've looked at Warrington, and teams like that, and they've struggled. They've struggled this season. Marine probably look out of that bottom four, and there's four that do get relegated from that. Marine look as though they could battle the way out of that. We certainly hope so. But they victims to obviously. I think Marine beat Rushall the other week, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
So they're having a tough time at the moment. They got battered by Chester over the weekend, which is no disgrace as Chester are currently top of the league. So I can understand why you'd rally for more support and more money. That their average gate is 445, which is the lowest in the league. But their average is boosted by some of the bigger teams such as Chester and Scunthorpe, and of course big gates against Peterborough Sports and Accrington Stanley in the FA Cup. So their natural attendance probably nudges 300. And then I was looking at what sort of kind of healthy income that they might have. They've got a state-of-the-art 3G pitch, but it's clear that's not big enough to maintain this level at this level of football. It doesn't sustain football at this level. You need more money than I think the what do they predict that if you run a 3G facility well enough, one pitch should get you between £270,000 to £300,000 a year in revenue. But that obviously that's gross. The net situation is a lot less.
Yeah.
So it's not really. It's it's not really big enough to compete against these
I don't think
Football League clubs.
No,
Chester, Scunthorpe, Hereford, Kidderminster, Darlington.
Yeah, old teams.
Big teams, aren't they? Scarborough.
All very, very recently were Football League teams in their own right, or are the result of Phoenix rebirths from professional teams that have not been able to make it financially at the top level, and so having to start again. I think Rushall's situation is complicated by them being surrounded by enormous Premier League and Championship.
And for context, their population alone is only 12,500, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely tiny. So, Wigan is probably the nearest big town to us with a population of 330. So 330,000 compared to Rushall's 12,500. It probably puts it into a little bit of context just how difficult they are. And they're in the Midlands as well, so they're surrounded by Villa, Birmingham, Wolves, Walsall, West Brom, teams like that just naturally attract bigger crowds.
And Birmingham City now, they've got a huge backer, haven't they now? They
do. Tom Brady.
Yeah,
the former.
And they're averaging gates at over 50,000 now, aren't they?
Not quite that much.
I think it was 52,000 the last gate, unless I misread it.
I think isn't St Andrews about 32,000?
I thought, well, there must be 32 then.
Oh yeah, I think they're maxing out.
That's why I wear glasses and contact lenses.
Well, yeah, but they're in League One right now, but they're right up there in. For the promotion, as we expected them to be. They managed to break the transfer fee twice within the same transfer window for bringing in players, one of whom was Jay Stansfield.
Was that 15 million, was it?
It was 15 million, which was for Jay Stansfield, signed.
That's a record for League One, isn't it?
It is, definitely. So he came along during the summer season, and he's now top scorer for the club and actually for the league in itself. So in that context then, Rushall are fighting every single battle, aren't they, on all fronts? Yeah,
because apart from having a huge backer, they're not going to attract an awful lot of stray supporters from those football clubs, I don't think. No. And to put it into context, we've got a population, Skelmersdale's got a population of just under 40,000, I think. And even if you put huge chunks of money into it, big, huge backer, multi-millionaire, it's not going to change the fact that, people would much sooner go and support Everton and Liverpool.
Yeah, they would. If you look at it from...
sad indictment.
Yeah, if you look at Bedford, they've had money pumped into them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna hit the big time. So it'll be the same with Rushall. It's a tiny community, but they've got to gather and marshal all the resources what they possibly can do if they're gonna pull this off. Otherwise, they do stand a very serious chance of being relegated out of the National League North.
Is it better to be a big fish in a small pond as opposed to a small fish in a big pond?
If it were me, I'd want to be a big fish in a small pond, and I'd want to at least be able to sustain.
How long can you do that for? Wigan Athletic had tried it. We're talking about the Premier League now. Wigan Athletic had tried it. It was the other club that had a go.
Reading?
It was the other club. There's been a few, hasn't there? Wimbledon?
Yeah.
Barnsley. So it's tough. It's tough to compete, and probably the one team that's doing it now and then. But you see a similar situation as the Wigan Athletics of this world is Bournemouth. Bournemouth are doing extremely well,
defying all the odds. Yeah, they've got a great sort of backing now in. What's his name? Mr. Foley. That's his name, Mr. Foley.
But the problem with that is that if they decide they're pulling the plug everything goes with it, doesn't it? The finance goes with it.
Financial backing isn't there anymore. You'll have to ask for a buyer. Their stadium is the smallest in the division by far, so the infrastructure isn't really there to support anything massive. Players who are, they've got a really good eye for buying in players, but they've not been able to kind of expand on that. I have a feeling that by the end of this season, or certainly at the end of the next one, there will be players who will be sold, for Bournemouth, and unfortunately that is kind of just the way of it, really. And I think we may well see the same at Olympic, unless they're able to turn the tides before the end of the season.
So going back to what you said in the opening bit was, and we've mentioned it before, is finding your natural level. Now, yes. We want to be competitive, we want to win things, and we want to be you said you want to be a big fish in a small pond, didn't you? But a lot of us want to be the small fish in the big pond as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And be competitive and win things.
Yeah.
I think if you lose your competitive edge, then supporters don't want to know you anymore. We know our gate was down to 87, the lowest we've had this season, and I understand it, totally get it, the fact that we're losing, and people don't want to come and support a losing team, but the sort of byproduct of that is the fact that finance has become even more limited, and there's less to spend, and you can't bring in players to help you when you're at that bottom end of the table. You can't attract players, so it's a double-edged sword, and I think supporters, I'd like to think, but I know they don't, you see. The supporters want to see you competitive all the time, and you can't make your reasons become excuses to them, and we don't make any excuses for the fact that finances are limiting where we can go.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no doubt about that. No. But everybody wants to be competitive. We want to be competitive, and but we all realise that we live to fight another day, and hopefully Rushall
do indeed.
Listen, they're not going to go out of business by the sounds of things. They're just maybe going to drop down and have to be competitive in the league that they drop down, and then we all dream of a nice run in one of the cup competitions. But listen, talking about clubs that can't sustain themselves, we're talking about Farsley Celtic again now.
Yes, we are.
So following Paul Barthorpe's resignation, there was a new board put together for directors. And they've decided that it's about time that they relayed the pitch at the Citadel, so they can return to their hometown. Yep. Now, running costs for the remainder of the season have been estimated at £25,000, and so far they've raised over £10,000.
Yeah, so they put out a GoFundMe page about a week ago, asking for donations. In order to ensure that they can finish the remainder of the season. Not necessarily focus on relaying the pitch or rebuilding, but just to be able to make it to the off-season. They estimated it at £25,000, and they have, so as of last night, Thursday, they raised nearly £10,000, which is in itself an astonishing achievement.
If I've read it right, they've got to get that pitch playable before the 31st of March.
Well, that's the cut-off point for the
to pass the ground grading.
Yes, that's
now. I was led to believe that the reason that they couldn't play nearer to home was because the spec on the plastic pitch had to be a certain level, so that's why they had to go as far as Buxton. So I would imagine now that they're going back to a grass pitch, the whole plastic thing is totally irrelevant. But in terms of you're going to have to get an awful lot of turf in. You can't grow grass in that time, so they're going to have to lay turf. I know that costs an awful lot of money, and to get the right grade in there. But then there's issues with the pitch itself, with the soil, isn't there? I was led to believe there was problems with the soil. Those problems haven't changed just because... No. Or were they excuses for not...
Well, you can only really sort of estimate, really. I mean, I'm sure the board will have got a much better idea of it than we have. But I think there were problems that were dogging this venture into a 3G pitch well before all of this kind of fallout has come about. Barthorpe says that time and time again that they were let down by the contracting company, but it all kind of stands to what they found and what they couldn't do it for. So not an inch of new surface has been laid at the Citadel. It's still kind of as bare as what it was several months ago, and whether they can do, I don't know whether they can do it in time. I really don't.
And I would have thought a lot of it's weather dependent as well, because if
Especially
it rains,
growth,
you can't lay turf on a soggy. And it start floating. I mean, I remember the old Stormy Corner when we moved to Stormy Corner. They laid turf on that, and because the drainage wasn't right, we had like magic carpets. Literally the turf was floating.
Oh.
We had Sky TV down there.
You're kidding! Oh my god!
We spent all day.
It's embarrassing.
We had Sky following us round, so they were talking to us and they were talking to me and the chairman at the time, I think it was Arthur Gore, and we had this fantastic day. But come to the end of the day, it'd been raining, and we were brushing water off the pitch. But you'd stand on one part of the pitch and it would squash down, and then another part of it would pop up, and it was in the end the game got called off. But it could have been played actually. I just think that the referee wanted to be the star attraction,
possibly,
and he got the final word and called it off. So they are definitely up against the clock, I would imagine.
They really are.
But once again, bizarrely, I can't understand why it seems that social media is awash with opinion about Farsley, but nobody seems to want to come on the show and give a balanced opinion about it.
No, we've not had anybody. Interestingly, we're not the only organisation that is out for Farsley Celtic representation there, because Ellis Platten, who runs the YouTube account Football Away Days that first brought the issue of Farsley Celtic to a wider public audience, has now asked directly for Paul Barthorpe to get in touch so that he can appear on the second installation of Football Away Days Farsley Celtic to give his account. Thus far, Paul Barthorpe has not been forthcoming with an answer.
It'd be far better coming on this show, because you get a balanced argument. I can look at it from a chairman's perspective, as I've done before, and I've sort of given the benefit of the doubt as well. But if he wants to come on this show as opposed to that, because I think it's a little bit more sort of farcical, isn't it? That I like it, by the way, but I think it's just there to discredit everything, isn't it? It's to look at the worst.
I think the directive that Platten would take is vastly different to how we would do it, and he's got his own style of broadcasting, and we have ours. So, but he has a bigger audience for now.
Allegedly.
Yeah. We'll look at the numbers when this turns off.
Yeah. When everybody's turned off.
Yes, quite.
But listen, we talked about social media, and we're talking again about the streamer YouTuber Aaron Hunt. We talked about him in last week's episode. He's setting up the reins at Daisy Hill, but he's also started a GoFundMe page to raise £8,000 towards ground improvements, and he's almost raised half of it already, which is great.
Yep.
But I believe fellow influencer Ethan Payne has donated £1,000 himself, and I think there's one or two other personalities that have started funding it as well. So I don't know whether it's create a head of steam, or whether the people that are really going to donate now are going to be fellow influencers like him, like Aaron himself.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if that's who he's targeted. Really, I mean, his outreach must be enormous, and I think a lot of them will be like-minded people who are, TikTokers, YouTubers, streamers, and what have you. Interestingly enough, he has called for a trials day to begin in the off-season, so he is very much looking at rebuilding Daisley Hill from the ground up. He's already identified areas of the ground that are going to need renovating and remodelling, and then he's going to turn his attention to the squad. Now, given that he started a GoFundMe page, you would be inclined to think that he's not got an awful lot of money to pump into the club himself. So he will just have to kind of rely on his voice and his reach to kind of build the squad.
Which is great in many respects, because we know that social media can create energy and drive towards a football. And
Yes.
it doesn't necessarily matter whether you've got crowds of 100, less than 100 at Daisy Hill, I would imagine, or you've got crowds in excess of 1,000. This is about drawing influence from social media and driving it that way. My problem with that is the same as I've said with other people that have put money into football clubs. The minute you walk away from it, that cash stream is
It dries up, doesn't it? Yeah, and then you're left to wonder how the club is going to survive.
It becomes very much a flash in the pan then.
It does very much become a flash in the pan, and I wonder whether we're seeing that with social media influencers using smaller football club as I don't want to say a toy, but as a fad, if you like, or a latest interest, without really understanding what it is that they're getting themselves involved in. I mean, we talked about Real Bedford and Bedford Town and the term of traditionalism and origins being at the forefront. Daisy Hill's a club that's been running for nearly 100 years now. I think it's
an old club.
It is an old club, yeah, and it's done extremely well to last as long as it has. And I mean that in the very best of respects, of course. But at what point does it start to lift off, and then under Aaron Hunt, and then where does it go afterwards?
Well, we've invited Aaron Hunt onto the show. Whether he takes up listen, he's a very busy man, as we know, but whether he takes up the offer, I'd like to basically ask him the question. From the outside looking in, it looks as though it benefits his persona more than it does Daisy Hill, and that'll be the argument, and that will be the questions probably that were directed at him before he took up the reins.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of honesty there and clarity, but what's your feeling? Do you think it's more about increasing his persona, because he's got an awful lot of publicity out of this so far?
Yeah, he has got an awful lot of publicity. He's
looks
also,
like an honest guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a local lad. He's from Bolton, but he has made an awful lot of following in different things. So he was rating and reviewing restaurants. He was going to football matches. Yeah, hotels. He was going to football games and reviewing them. He's got his own e-football team online with Angry Ginge. So there's different avenues.
Was that Daisy Hill, though, when he did the FIFA, was it, did he... Sorry, it was team manager, wasn't he? He was was he team manager of Daisy Hill? I don't know how it works, you say. I'm not into this trend of...
Yeah, so it's all video games based, isn't it? So, I think he...
I think he was. I think he sort of went under the brand of Daisy Hill on team manager, and that's when the manager got in touch with him and said, listen, the manager of Daisy Hill got in touch with him and said, listen, there might be something to build on out of this, and that's how he's managed
Possibly.
to get it. Listen, I like the idea of social media creating money for a football club and increasing the popularity. It certainly happened at Wrexham with the Hollywood the Hollywood boys, and it's turned into a success story because
Salford City as well.
Yeah, not so much Salford City, because that's a strange one. But where Wrexham's concerned, I heard or read somewhere that the money that Ryan
Reynolds
and Rob McElhenney put into the football club, they more than got that back. Whether that's gone back into Wrexham. But I know when I've been on holiday in North Wales, I've spoken to local people in the likes of Conway, and they've said that a lot of people now, a lot of Americans are coming over to North Wales to holiday just to go and watch Wrexham. And off the back of this phenomena, they've decided to holiday in the North Wales because they're big fans of these Hollywood stars.
Yeah,
so it's great.
I mean, what an influence that carries. But whether we can get people holidaying in Skem is another thing. But we'll push that one out. But Meanwhile, I think Prestatyn's probably well served in North Wales from having some Hollywood influencers knocking around in the north. But, so it can certainly, be an enormous positive for the prosperity of a football club. It'll be very interesting to see how this one is mapped out, because this one hasn't carried nearly the publicity of Wrexham, but at the same time, there are opportunities here for Daisy Hill, and there are opportunities for Aaron Hunt.
Yeah, I think, what did I say? I'd personally like to know whether any YouTube influencers have actually used Skem as a brand name on Team Manager or FIFA or whatever. And if so, come forward and get involved with Skem United, increasing our profile. Well, listen, I think that sums up Daisy Hill for now, and hopefully at some stage Aaron Hunt might want to come on the show and give his perspective, not the media perspective that's getting spun out right now. I'd like to go into the nitty gritty and see what he actually gets out of it himself. And I'm not, in terms of finances, I know he's not going to get anything there, but in the long term, does this increase his persona? I think it certainly does. But listen, moving on to AFC Fylde. Now, AFC Fylde is a club that I've followed for a long time. They were Kirkham and Wesham before they won the FA Vars. They're the only club in the country that's won both the FA Vars and the FA Trophy, which I found quite interesting.
It's a wonderful piece of trivia, that. Yeah,
they parted company with former Premier League striker Kevin Phillips just after 4 months in charge. It probably was inevitable, with just 5 wins in 20 games and languishing in the bottom 2, I think, something like that. Now, the club obviously had really bold ambitions to gain promotion to the Football League by 2022. I don't know whether COVID prevented that from happening, but they've had a topsy-turvy time. They've been relegated from the National League, and then they've regained promotion. But you assume that at AFC Fylde, because they're so ambitious, that they're backing it up with good finances. So if that's the case, you can understand why the likes of Kevin Phillips is not given a chance. But the question is, October, is it really not long enough? Can you create any stability? Or are you just purely worried about the fact that you probably give him a shed load of money and he's not really made a good fist of things?
I mean, as big teams are proving, really, you can have all the money in the world, but if it isn't spent correctly, or if the formation of the team isn't gonna work, then money can't buy you anything. Kevin Phillips has not been given long enough, in my opinion. Just 4 months, I don't think is any time at all to be able to turn around an entire club and an entire team. I think you've got to kind of question whether he was, tactically adept to managing at this level.
He managed at South Shields, didn't he? I think he had. He got them promoted.
Okay.
So he's done a reasonably good job.
So he's got some good backing on his CV. Yeah. I think what we're finding now is that chairmen and clubs are very, very gun ready, aren't they? If you like, 20 games. That's barely half a season. That if you're in sort of the national leagues and what have you, you play 46 games in a season. That's not even half. You're gonna need longer than that to be able to turn the tide. For me, that's not fair.
No, listen, AFC Fylde, they probably maybe a little bit like we did, with expectations of a former Premier League player converting that talent into management. We tried it with Pascal Chimbonda, it didn't work. I'm pretty sure that they thought this is a good opportunity. Kevin Phillips, he scored goals for fun back in his day, and they probably thought it could work. But once again, proof, if it was ever needed, that the transition from an extremely talented footballer to a manager isn't easy at all.
True.
And like I say, back in the day, we played. I think we went head-to-head, toe-to-toe with Chester. We got pipped on goal difference. We ended up playing AFC Fylde in the semi-finals of the playoffs, and they beat us, and then they made that slow progression up the leagues. But listen, it is what it is. Whoever takes that managerial role next time has got to be. He's got to hit the ground running, because you're not going to get. It's quite clear, and I don't think the supporters are particularly happy. I don't think they feel as though he's being given long enough either. But listen, as I say, you don't know what tools he's being given for the job, and if he's been given far more and expecting far more from it, then probably they've made the right decision. Certainly in their minds anyway. But listen, we move on to Marine and Southport. Both had wins recently, but Marine have not managed to get themselves out of the relegation spots. They're still there. I think they'll manage to get themselves. I think they'll scrape themselves out of there.
Yeah, they're still level on points with Needham Market, 2 points behind Oxford City, 4 points behind Radcliffe. So it's actually quite exciting down at the bottom of the National League North. Yeah, any one of 6 teams could get relegated. Is it 4 clubs get relegated from the National League? 4 clubs.
It's
enormous.
It's cutthroat, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. But
I'm looking at Radcliffe Borough, because when we talked about them earlier on in the season, didn't we? And they were languishing. I think they were bottom at one stage, weren't they? Certainly in them bottom relegation spots. But they've done particularly well at the moment. They've had 3 consecutive wins, which has dragged them out of the relegation places. Their joint management team of Bernard Morley and Anthony Johnson, of ex-Salford City fame. They seem to be finding their feet there. But we said it before, we'll say it again, the Division 1, the National League Division 1 North is one hell of a tough division. And very, very tough to get out of. Yeah,
very much so. It'll be really interesting to see how they kind of carry this on now. Having Morley and Johnson there is an absolute blessing.
The characters.
Oh yeah,
Did you watch the series Class of '92?
No.
Oh, you've got to watch it. It was better in the early days when Morley and Johnson were involved. It was really good, because it was great to see it going from a non-league, from basically northwest counties, as it was then, and the way they took the club up a few levels.
Astonishing,
but unfortunately got sacked eventually, as most managers do. The most inevitable thing is that either a manager moves on or he gets sacked.
Yeah, he does.
But talking about the Northern Premier League West, Sean McConville read the riot act to his players last week.
At Clitheroe,
and he managed to get a battling win against Kidsgrove on Saturday, which has alleviated a little bit of the frustration that he felt.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kidsgrove are not having a magnificent time of it at the minute. They've recently changed managers. They're now a team with a joint manager arrangement in there, one of whom is Tom Pope, formerly of Port Vale. So he's now cutting his teeth in management, probably finding out the hard way again.
Quite a character, by all accounts.
Yes, a character is one thing. Very, very active on X.
Be careful what we say.
Quite. But so McConville's sort of clearly stabilised things at Clitheroe, as we say. Got another win out of the bag there, which now makes it 4 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses from his 10 games in charge, which he's picked up points in 7 out of his opening 10 games. Not bad at all, really. But I think if you talk to him, I think he said it at the weekend, is that one of his best moves was signing Leon Creech out of the Northwest Counties Division 1 from Darwin. He was playing for Darwin at the start of this season. Now he scored again in that game on Saturday. He's only 25.
That's a good thing about Sean. Sean will appreciate that there's a plethora of good players at the lower levels, having come from the lower leagues himself.
Yes, absolutely. He's clearly found a bit of a jewel in the crown there. He's in Creech. So while while McConville's still working really, really hard, I think he's stabilised Clitheroe to a point where they can probably finish out this season in sort of relative stability, that they're not going to be pulled into a relegation battle, and then the tough work begins really to try and see how we can mount a bit more of an improvement on next season.
When he arrived, when he took over the reins from Jimmy Bell, everything seemed to be hunky-dory, and then we found out a little bit later that finances were a little bit restricted. Carl Garner appealed to local businessmen to help the football club out and ask for increased support. We've not heard anything from Carl since, so we assume that there's a bit of money's been pumped back into the football club, because I think they've put one or two players on contracts in recent times, and of course that was one of Sean's biggest worries, was the fact that whatever talented players, and he believed he had talented players there, he couldn't afford to put them on a contract. So if Carl Garner's listening and he wants to come on the show and explain how things are going on at Clitheroe, and of course Sean, we'd love to have Sean on the show, because Sean is the first player that I ever sold to the Football League, so I'd love to have him on the show. What a character as well.
Where'd you sell him and how much for?
Sold him for well, you know what, it was £3,750, the initial fee. I didn't want to let him go at first, but his dad Peter came to me and he said, "Listen, Frank," he said, "he's got an opportunity of playing in the Football League." He said, "Don't drag your feet over this one, or he's going to lose the dream of playing professional football." And in the end, I thought about it, and you know what I'm like, I'm soft as they come.
Marmite.
Yeah, and in the end, I put him above the football club. And I'm glad I did, because he went on to have a stellar career in the Football League. There's no doubt about that.
Accrington Stanley, wasn't it?
Well, Accrington Stanley went to Rochdale. I think he followed John Coleman over there when John spent a few months or a year or so there, and then he ended up coming back eventually to Accrington Stanley. Listen, he's had a fabulous career. There's no doubt about it, and I'm glad I played a little part in it. I think in the end, the deal was there was add-ons, obviously, like if he played so many games, it doubled. So I think we got £7,500 for him. Wow. Then we got an extra for the 10 games, and then there was sell-on clauses. So I think in the end, probably Skem United benefited from about maybe 20-something thousand pound from the sale of Sean McConville, which proves that you've got to look at the bigger picture. Sometimes you've got to look at the bigger picture than trying to get the big hit first off. And Tommy will tell you that himself. It's not always about the first hit. No. It's about if they're successful and they get moved on. Yeah. It's the sell-on clause. Yeah. But yeah, love to have Sean on the show. Love to have Carl Garner on the show. If you're listening, give us a shout out. Listen, that brings us to the end of the first part of the show. In part two, we'll be speaking to our special guest, the manager of Market Drayton Town, Dan Dawson. For now, we'll take a commercial break and see you soon. Special shout out to all the businesses that support Skelmersdale United Football Club: Origin Sign Company, T&W Garners, 7PDS, Skem Express Cars 5005, Lease Car UK, RNB Auto Centre, SB Skills Solutions, and Hey Presto Web Design. Thank you to everyone who donates to the club, supports our race nights, raffles, and the lottery bonus ball scheme, and of course the last man standing. A special thanks to those who organise these fundraising events, especially the incredible Lee Davis and Lucas Bergquist. To all who stand by us both on and off the field, we are truly grateful. If you wish to sponsor the show, please contact me at chairman.skemutdfc@gmail.com or call me on 07766 054 548. All proceeds will go to Skelmersdale United Football Club. Thank you for your unwavering support. Hello and welcome to the second part of the Speaking Frankly football show, and a very, very warm welcome to Dan Dawson, who's the manager of Market Drayton Town Football Club. We've been often accused of being a very northern biased podcast, so we want to redress the balance. and dip our toes into the southern division of the Northwest Counties. So a warm welcome, Dan.
Hi Frank, hi AJ, thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to chatting football.
Yeah, listen, before we go into the main interview, Market Drayton is famous for gingerbread. I didn't know that until I read up about it, and the club is actually nicknamed the Gingerbread Men.
It is. It's a bit of a false prophecy, that, to be honest, Frank, which I didn't realise myself until a couple of weeks ago, having chatted to the chairman, that I think gingerbread was actually first made in France, and it was a bit of a ploy from the town to attract some tourists to the area. It's clearly worked, because when you Google Market Drayton, it's one of the first things that come up. So, the gingerbread men stuck.
Yeah, I did read as much. Yeah, there was definitely a French connection. Do they actually make gingerbread at all in Market Drayton, then? Or is that just a...
I'm not sure, to be honest, Frank. Something I'll have to look into.
Yeah, all right. Listen, anyway, so Dan, you took over the hot seat in May last year at Market Drayton, but before we talk about your new role, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in football.
Yeah, I started coaching really young, sort of 18, various kids clubs, football clubs along the way, before being offered the opportunity to work in academy recruitment, which I took up and really enjoyed. And then from that moved into the county schools football, working predominantly with academy players or lads that were just short of that kind of standard. And that really ignited my passion for managing and coaching, at a good level. And then the opportunity came up to manage Redgate Clayton about 6 years ago, who were a Step 7 team in the Staffordshire County Senior League. And we had quite a lot of success over that period. We had to kind of start again. It was an ageing team at the time that did really well, but quite a lot of players drifted away from the club. And we had to rebuild from scratch, really. And that sort of culminated last year in Redgate winning their first league title in 30 years, as well as a League Cup, and falling just short on penalties in 2 other cup finals. So, I think over the course of the 6 years, we were really successful. We went unbeaten at home in the league for 2.5 seasons. And last year we actually went unbeaten and topped the global points per game league table, which is something I was not aware of until it happened. But we just picked a few other unbeaten teams like TNS to the top of that, which is quite the honour. And then was recognised by the Staffordshire FA as Coach of the Year at the end of last season, which I was really privileged and really proud of, to be honest, before getting the opportunity to come to Market Drayton.
So how old are you now, Dan?
32 at the minute.
32. We've had the privilege of interviewing Davy Jones from Atherton LR, and he's 25, 26. I mean, these managers are getting younger these days.
They are.
Younger and younger. I think there's a big push for it at the minute in terms of young minds and good coaches taking that opportunity earlier to get into non-league instead of going through the typical academy route into coaching, into the system. There's quite a lot that are going the non-league route and having quite a lot of success. So I think there's more and more chairmen looking that way, as opposed to recycling through the same managerial shortlist that normally turn up on vacancies.
With that in mind, then, Dan, were you not overwhelmed, or was there any kind of trepidation into stepping into the manager's hot seat at Redgate so soon in your development?
Not particularly. I'd been at the club previously. I probably should have added that as assistant manager with the reserve team, and we had quite a bit of success there. We won the reserve league and another cup final with the reserve team previously. So it's a club I was familiar with already. The committee at the time were really understanding of the fact that it was a complete rebuild in terms of the players at the club. I think we kept maybe 4 players at the time and had to rebuild from scratch, really. And I think the first season we finished 6th. Then 4th, 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, and then won it. So there was continual progression, which was great. But there was no sort of trepidation from myself. It was just a great opportunity, a really good, well-run local club at Step 7 that fortunately we were very successful at.
Yeah, you absolutely were.
In terms of geography, how far away is Redgate from Market Drayton?
It's probably a 15-minute drive, 15-20 minutes.
Oh, very nice.
Both clubs are right on the borderline, really, where Shropshire, Cheshire and Staffordshire meet. So it's very little distance between those clubs. So for me, actually, I lived slap bang in the middle of both clubs. So it was an ideal transition, really.
So listen, your chairman, Matthew Allen, he's described you as one of the most exciting talents in management. I was first of all going to ask you whether that puts added pressure on you, but I also wanted to ask you what attracted you to Market Drayton in the first place.
Yeah, so starting with Market Drayton and what attracted me, if I'm being really honest with you both, and a lot of people who are close to me will know this, I was thinking of stepping away for a little bit. I'm due to have a family. I've got a baby due at the end of April.
Congrats.
I was debating taking it. Thank you very much. Thank you. But I was debating taking a little bit of a break from football after having a really successful year and dealing with the family and spending some time with them. And then Matt Allen reached out. A number of clubs did, to be honest, but none of them really kind of tickle my fancies, but for want of a better phrase. And when I looked at Market Drayton itself, when I was growing up as a player, as a young kid, and as a coach, Market Drayton was always, well recognised, well renowned, had a really good reputation, playing Step 4 football. I think they finished 9th at Step 4, only 6 or 7 years back. And then it's had a really difficult time, which included, 2 relegations and a reprieve last season where they finished rock bottom of the league. And knowing the size of Market Drayton, knowing the fan base, and having spoken to Matt, he really sold me on the club, really. I'm a big believer in not really picking clubs, but picking chairmen that you're going to go and work with. You've got to have somebody you can work with and work alongside and have everybody pulling in the same direction. And that was the big reason that Drayton really stood out for me. It was a big club. It's got a big local fan base, and there's a big opportunity to turn their fortunes around. And it's a massive challenge, don't get me wrong, but that's what excites me about football, the challenge.
Yeah, listen, I'll jump to a question that was, I don't know whether you know Michael Daniels at all.
I bumped into him a few times. He does a lot of ground hopping around some of the games.
All right, because he's asked the question, what's the big difference between, the biggest difference between the Staffordshire County League and the North West Counties that you've spotted so far?
Well, I think there's a couple, to be honest. You can start with the obvious in terms of facilities, far better in the North West Counties. Although there's very much still some grounds that could use some TLC and a little bit of updating. The facilities are much better. The quality of the whole league, I think, is better. So from first in the league to bottom of the league, on any given Saturdays, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've been on the receiving end of, unfortunately. Anybody can beat anybody. Whereas in the Staffordshire County Senior League, the top 5 teams tend to run away with it. There's a big gap between the top 5 teams there and the rest of the league. And I think from a personal perspective, in the Staffordshire County League, it's very insular. I knew every player, every team, every manager, what formation they were going to come out in. In fact, I could probably recite most of those teams starting 11s now, to be honest. Whereas now coming over to North West Counties, it's a much wider demographic of player, profile of player, and even for ourselves, we've got players now from Northwich, from Shrewsbury, from Telford, from Stoke. So the net's much wider. It's much harder to get hold of that information, to get out and watch as many teams as you'd like. Networking with other managers has been key. And just kind of cycling back a little bit, I guess, to the last question as well, Frank. I know you mentioned Matt said some really nice words, which I'm really appreciative of. And did that bring any additional pressure? And I know you spoke on the last podcast that you're a big fan of psychology, and I'm the same. I work at the University of Staffordshire, and I work with some excellent sports psychologists. And when we speak to our players, one of the things we always try and do is take the emphasis off of the negative aspect of pressure and try and view pressure as a privilege. If we weren't doing something well, or we weren't doing something in the right way, we wouldn't be in the opportunity to be under pressure. Is the way we try and look at it and see it as a bit more of a challenge than a threat state. I hope I've got that right. My sports psychologist will be on at me next week at work, but that's what we try and focus on from that aspect. So I don't really feel any underlying pressure from the chairman, because I know he believes in me, which is the key aspect, and I know we work together really well from that point of view. Yeah,
well, listen, as a fellow chairman, I've always been a big advocate of the relationship between manager and chairman. It's got to be it's got to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't take Matt's praises enough. He took over as chairman at the start of this year, and I did, when we spoke about the job in the summer, I did say it was dependent on him being named chairman at the AGM, which he was, fortunately. And he's done a phenomenal job in terms of trying to turn the club around and change its fortunes, both on and off the pitch. And we've still got a little bit of work to do between the whole club in terms of making sure our processes are a little bit smoother, more volunteers, but don't we all want them? The few and far between, aren't they? We could all do with a few extra volunteers at the club. Yeah. But yeah, the club's now back on what I would consider the right trajectory and heading in the right direction, which is great.
Yeah. Would you agree it's been a reasonably tough baptism of fire since you started? You've dipped in and out of form, throughout the season. Is it... What are you expecting? What's your expectations for this season now? I mean, you're in a good position. You're not going to be looking at a reprieve at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one, this, Frank, when I talk about this with anybody, because naturally I want to win every game. And coming into the start of the season, whilst it's a big task and a big ask, I set really high expectations of myself and the team to try and hit the playoffs. And Actually, when I took over the role in the summer, I watched the last sort of 6 games back on the VO. And I don't want to be disrespectful towards any players, because without them, the club wouldn't be where it is. We wouldn't have finished the season. But it was quite clear at that point that actually we needed a big overhaul. And I think we kept maybe 2 players from last year's squad, bringing in maybe 20 new players. After maybe a third of the season, you start to develop, you pick up players that are dropping down the leagues, or a couple of people you noticed are playing really well at step 7. And you almost rebuild another squad. And that's where we hit a lovely bit of form, to be honest. We were a little bit unfortunate at the start of the season that we had so many away games in a row, because our home form was really good. And then about a third of the way through the season, we hit a great patch of form where we had a great base and a great spine to the team, and we were doing really well. And then we lost, unfortunately, in the FA Vars second round to Bourne Town, who I think are in the last 8 now, actually.
Yeah, they beat Everton a lot, didn't they, in the last?
Yeah. They're a strong side, and to be honest, we came really close to pinching it. But then after that, we had a couple of difficult results. We lost away to Camelaird 5-0, where we had an early red card that was later reprieved. I think that was the first time in my 16 years of coaching we had one turned over, which was always nice, I guess, but a little bit too late. And then we had a bit of a tough run where we played Stafford Town, who were top of the league, and we lost 1-0, and we had a goal disallowed for offside late on, and we were unlucky not to pinch a point. And then we had the Abbey Hulton game, which of course was a difficult point in our season and a big learning curve for us as a team. And to be honest, it's the only time this season, Frank and AJ, that I've been really disappointed with us as a team, because the first time and the only time we'll ever do this, is where we've rolled over and got our bellies tickled a little bit. At 4 or 5-0, we should have been a little bit more savvy and tightened things up a little bit, and we should never have let it get to the scoreline that it did, and that's a really disappointing aspect of our performance this season. But ultimately, what it comes down to, when you look at the league table, I think we're maybe, with a game in hand, 12-13 points off the playoffs, but we've dropped 6 points this season to Shawbury, which, no disrespect to Shawbury, they earned them both times we played them, but they're at the bottom of the table, which is quite frustrating. And we lost a nearly away game to Walscott Heath, who were near the bottom of the table, and that was very early on in the season. You take those 9 points and it's a very different outlook for us going into the last 7 games of the year. So we know we aren't far away. And I actually saw a brilliant quote the other day, which kind of put it in perspective a little bit for me, which actually said, "Enjoy being in the process of becoming," which I thought was a really nice way of reminding myself that, to kind of take a step back a little bit and look at the progress. Progress isn't linear, and actually to try and remove some of that emotion and will to win a little bit and look at it as a whole. And we've tried to do that with our players, and they've really got the picture. They're all bought in, which is great. And actually, sometimes when you take that step back and you're able to see the full extent of the journey that we've come on, where we've cycled through a lot of players. We come up against a couple of difficult moments this season where we lost 3 of our back 4, which were instrumental for us. It was 2 with injuries and one getting recalled to Shrewsbury Town. You then reflect on that and go, actually, this is a pretty positive season. It's a great step in the right direction for the club, and it gives us a really solid base to add 3 or 4 players in the off season and hit the ground running, hopefully.
Yeah, certainly. Given the fortunes of the club when you taken it over, Dan, how big was this rebuild? How long do you feel like it took you, and how difficult was it?
We're talking there, AJ, like it's the past tense, but I'll be honest, this is just the very beginning of it. My ambitions and the club's ambitions ultimately are eventually to get this club back to step 4. So this is the very beginning of the rebuild. It's not even close to being finalised, and I appreciate the initial nuance of the question, but actually in the summer, I can't tell you how busy it was. We're trying to recruit players, and that's really difficult when you just finish bottom of the table and you're on the phone telling people you're going to finish at the playoffs, and they almost laugh you off the phone. And that's your ambition. So it was very difficult from that aspect. I was very fortunate I was able to take some really strong players with me from my previous club, which helped provide a little bit of a core and some players that knew the way we wanted to play and how we like to play our football. And we tried to build around that, and we're in a position now where we've got a squad we feel is good enough to be in and around the playoffs, and we're just looking for 3 to 5 additions really in the summer, as opposed to ultimately we bought in probably 30 to 40 players in pre-season and narrowed that down to around 21 before the start, before we kicked the ball. So I'm hoping this off season is going to be a little quieter.
I'm sure it will be. My God.
but in terms of it, it's very much a rebuild, isn't it? You've come into a club and you've got to establish yourself and a new squad of players. How difficult has that been?
Very difficult in terms of from the expectations we put on ourselves. But from a player's perspective, I can't ask any of the players, to be honest, that have been a part of our season. They've all given us 110%. They've all bought in. The fans have been fantastic. I think our average attendance is up by over 50% based on last year. I think we've got the third highest average attendance in the league, behind Sandbach and Winsford, which are two really big clubs.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. We've had a couple of games this season with 300 plus at them, which is brilliant. And on the, in the background, the chairman and the secretary, director of football, doing an excellent job of trying to rebuild us off of the pitch. And we've got that great relationship which we've spoken about, but there's also a big element of trust there. They're putting a lot of trust in me to make sure the football side of the game matches what they're trying to do off the pitch and all the work they're putting in place. And likewise, I have to trust them and I do trust them that they're doing an excellent job in putting us in a position that, if we do go up, we're in a great position to start challenging again and not be looking over our shoulder.
We talked about the topsy sort of turvy form of late, but you've got Nicky Parker at the club who's scored a lot of goals for you this season, but he's gone through a bit of a drought lately. Is that obviously that makes a big difference? You must, you're obviously missing the goal scoring prowess of Nicky at the moment.
Yeah, there's Nick. There's also Harry Bagley, who's his goals tally looks a lot less, but he's a wide player, pacey wide player, and he went travelling at sort of mid-December time. End of December, and we missed his ability to stretch defences. Nicky's a fantastic player, and we're really lucky to have him at the club. He was courted by a whole host of Step 4 teams in the summer, so the fact we managed to keep hold of him at Drayton was a real coup for the club, and we're looking forward to getting Nicky back amongst the goals. And I think it's easy sometimes to point the finger at a striker when they haven't scored goals, but actually as a team, we haven't been creating them. We haven't been creating the opportunities to put away, and we've been conceding far too many goals ultimately. If we weren't conceding those goals, we'd probably win a lot of the games we've had recently. Yeah,
but you've got Jack Finney there, who's contributing a few at the moment as well.
Yeah, Jack's a fantastic player. He's one of the players that stepped up with us from Step 7. Central midfield player who, a bit of a quarterback for us, really distributes the ball really well, and he's lethal from around the edge of the box, the odd free kick, and he's our penalty taker as well, which helped his goal tally, I'm sure. His brother will thank me for adding that bit in when they listen to it back. But he's a really good player, talented player, Jack. And we've also got Max Rain chipped in with a few good goals, fantastic player. But to be honest, I can't, we were without two of those players on Saturday at Runcorn away, which I think actually, Frank, when I listened to last week's podcast, I think we might be the only prediction you got wrong from the South Division with that draw away at Runcorn. But yeah, we went down there.
You said Runcorn were going to win.
Yeah, you both predicted a Runcorn win, I think. So it's a good result.
Yeah, well, listen, that makes the result even better, because we feel as though Runcorn have really turned a corner since the new management duo came in. They've been doing really well.
They were really impressive. The pitch was horrendous.
I know I was going to say that because I listened to your YouTube interview. You weren't very complimentary about the pitch.
I don't think they would be either, to be honest. I know it's something they were frustrated about, but it was, to give you an insight. Well, I was probably a little bit more angry about it because our first goal was a shocker. Their goal, it was a back pass from our centre half that's hit a horrible bobble and gone over the goalkeeper's leg for a tap into an open goal. So I was probably even more frustrated than I would usually be at that kind of pitch. But it didn't allow for a lot of football to be played, to be honest. It became a real physical battle. But one thing I would say is the team the new guys have put together is far better than the team we played at the start of the season. And I think they'll have similar ambitions to us next season in terms of trying to grab one of those playoff spots. Thomas Ruffer, what a talent he is. If they keep hold of him next year, again, I think he'll be a real good addition for them. And they had the lad up front, I can't remember his name, he was at Droylston last year. Handful, big, strong, powerful forward. They've got goals in them going forward for sure. It was a great point for us on the road, to be honest. They were flying in the form table. We were lucky maybe not to pinch it, but I think a draw was a fair result, to be honest.
So how good is the standard? I think you've alluded to it a little bit, but I mean, has it shocked you or?
I'll be honest, a lot of people have asked me that. If you take Winsford, Sandbach and Stafford and Abbey Hulton away from the league, and I think the standard is very similar to the top end of the county league, but I will add the top end of the county league over the last couple of years, I think that has dropped off drastically this season. I think there is a big gap, but it didn't necessarily surprise me other than the consistency of it. I expected there to be a few more standout teams who would get beat most weeks, but you don't see that very often. The level is kind of where I expect it to be, but it's consistent across the whole division. and then you've got 3 or 4 teams that are running away at the top end of it. You Winsford, Stafford, Sandbach, Abbey Hulton, and you look at the team Abbey Hulton have put together. Wow, it's predominantly a Step 4 team playing at Step 6. Yeah. They've done an incredible job of their rebuild.
Who would you say has been your toughest opposition so far then?
I have to say Abbey Hulton. Then I definitely after the 9-0 defeat. You have to tip your hat to teams. They were fantastic. Luke Walsh on the day was unplayable. And they literally, I think you could drop them into a Step 4 league now and they would compete well. Yeah. I think you'll see them get promoted. A lot of people expecting Winsford and Stafford to go up. I actually think it'll be Winsford and Abbey Hulton, and that's no disrespect to Stafford. I love Adam, their manager, he's a great guy, but I just think the experience in that Abbey Hulton team now, almost all of them in the last year to 18 months have played Step 3 or Step 4 football, and that's going to count for a lot when it gets to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. So you've stole me question there. So Winsford for the winning the league and Abbey Hulton through the playoffs, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Although I think Stafford will close the gap in the league. If you look at the run-in of both teams, Stafford got slightly, on paper anyway, a nicer run-in than Winsford have. And we'll hopefully throw a spanner in the works and help Adam and Stafford Town out when we play Winsford at home. But I think they've got the edge on that, and I think Abbey Hulton in the playoffs, there's just too much experience. I don't really see them losing. They went really far in the Vars. They're getting stronger and stronger. They just brought in Kyle Blake and Lewis Bergin from Kidsgrove. 2 great signings, and I can't really see past them. I'd love to see Eccleshall do well. I'm really good friends with the Eccleshall manager Liam Kelly, and I think they'll probably pinch a playoff spot from Citadel, who I think might drop out of it, and I'd like to see them do well. But I think Abbey Hulton, from anybody that's watched a lot of the Southern Division, will be their favourite to win the playoffs.
Speaking of Abbey Hulton, you mentioned there that you feel like they're a Step 4 formation playing at Step 6. What's your interpretation of how they've managed to get players from Step 4 down to Step 6? How have they done that, do you think?
The same way that most teams would do that, I guess. I don't think it's a secret that they're paying pretty well. But the manager has got a great relationship with some of those boys as well. I think he's been at Congleton before, John Beaumont, so he's got a pre-existing relationship with a lot of those players, and he's played at that kind of standard himself. So the money helps, but you've got to have the relationship in the first place for them to even entertain it. So they've done a great job of that. And of course, that's something, they didn't start with that team in September. They've built over the course of the year, and as they've done well, they've attracted 1 or 2 more, done well again, attracted another couple. And now they've built themselves a really strong sort of 18-man squad.
Is there a danger, do you think, that in this day and age with teams like Clitheroe and Farsley Celtic and Rushall Olympic, who've just announced financial struggles, do you think that this is something that could come back and bite them in the backside?
Again, I don't want to speak too much on other clubs, but I think it's always a difficult situation when, if the manager was to move on, would you have to ask yourself the question, would a lot of those players stay there? And I don't think they would. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? It comes down to 2 things really for clubs trying to build for sustainable success. You don't want to tie it to money, and you don't want to tie it to an individual. So what do you tie it to ultimately? Because if you haven't got a manager who's really well connected with really good players, or you haven't got a decent budget, where are you going to build your success from? Because I'm a big believer that I think at this level, I think at all levels of football, to be honest, 70% of your success is how good your recruitment is, 20% probably how good your management team is, and another 10% on your processes and your behind your background team, I guess, your chairman, your secretary, all those kind of things. So if your recruitment's not right, I don't think anybody's set up for success. It's really difficult, and I think you've seen that with the guys who moved from Ulsager to Northwich. They picked up the team. They were flying with Ulsager top of the league before moving over to Northwich, and it's taken a lot of time for them now to start winning the odd game. And if you look at it, it's because they've had a whole big recruitment cycle. They haven't really kept too many of the lads that they had there initially and transformed them. They've recruited new players into that system to play the way they want to play. So I think there's always a risk, to be honest. I think a lot of clubs have to tie themselves to one or the other, and it's always a bit of a difficult balancing act.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So what are your aspirations for the club, and how far do you think you can feasibly take them yourself?
I'd like to take them to Step 4. That's my goal. It's what I believe I can do. I think when you look at the strength of particularly the Division 1 South, I think, is a really strong Step 6 league. And if you look at our Vars, we only beat a couple of Step 5 teams. We beat Studley, who were, I think, 6th in the Midlands League or 7th in the Midlands League. We beat Hereford Pegasus, who were a Step 5 team. And we came really close to beating Bullen Town, who were the last 8 of the Vars. Abbey Holton went really far in the Vars as well. And I think when you look at Sandbach, Winsford, Stafford, there's a lot of strong teams there. And again, Brockton won our league at a canter last year, and they've gone straight up and they're challenging again. And I think that shows the strength of the league and the players coming from it and through it. So if we're to get promoted, we're looking at the top end of that Step 5 as our ambition again. And we want to push to get to Step 4. We want to get Market Drayton back to where it was previously, and back to a club that people have got a lot of respect for. And in the local area, a lot of people talk about Kidsgrove, Hanley Town, Newcastle Town, Leek Town, and Market Drayton used to be amongst those names, and it isn't anymore. And it's my, I've got a big passion about trying to restore that.
We feel exactly the same here at Scam.
yeah, exactly. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, were you interested in other roles?" Not really, to be honest. We've got a great chairman. It's a great club, and getting them to Step 4 would be a huge achievement for me and the club.
So beyond that, the ambitions you later on in football, any ambitions at all, or you just take him each year, each season as it goes?
Yeah, I never want to write anything off really in terms of ambitions of football, because I'm still, like I say, in terms of football, relatively young from a coaching perspective. I think eventually I'd like to transition to a sort of director of football type role, something that similar to what James was talking about on the previous podcast, which I really enjoyed, to be honest. For a day job, I work at the University of Staffordshire and run higher education courses, but work in a multidisciplinary background with sports psychologists, physiologists, sports therapists, and sports coaches, and I think I've got a lot to offer from that aspect of the game. But a little bit later in the career, let's try and get Drayton to Step 4 first.
Yes. So listen, Stockport Georgians at home on Saturday. A tough game, even though you battered them 5-1 in August, was it?
Yeah, that's another game. It's a little bit of a false scoreline, really. They went 1-0 up early, and then we went 1-1, and then there was a red card not long after. So they played the majority of that game with 10 men. They're a good side. They play really good football, or try to play really good football. I love Louis de Souza, their left back, really talented player. So if anybody wants to come and take him out of our division, feel free. Really, really good player, athletic up and down. Lucas Berry's up there with the top goal scorers in the league, and that's one thing we'll be looking to shut down. If Lucas doesn't score, they don't seem to have too many other significant goal threats. So if we can take Berry out of the game, we're hoping we can get a decent result.
Well, listen, best of luck on Saturday. Best of luck for the rest of the season. It's been an inspirational story listening to you. Fantastic interview. Thanks very much, Dan, and the best of luck for the rest of the season.
No, thank you both for the opportunity, and best of luck at the week. Are you guys not playing at the weekend, are you, this week?
Well, we've got a friendly up at Darwin, so
okay.
we don't play now until Friday the 28th when we've got Exton, which is going to be a difficult game for us, but we're hoping that the gods are going to be friendly and there's a reprieve at the end of the season. We just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, fingers crossed for you guys, and if there's anything I can help with, please feel free to give me a shout.
Nice one.
Thank you, Dan.
Very much appreciate that. Take care, mate.
No worries. See you
Cheers.
soon, guys.
Bye now.
Bye.
Special shout out to all the businesses that support Skelmersdale United Football Club: Origin Sign Company, T&W Garners, 7PDS, Skem Express Cars 5005, Lease Car UK, RNB Auto Centre, SB Skills Solutions, and Hey Presto Web Design. Thank you to everyone who donates to the club, supports our race nights, raffles, and the lottery bonus ball scheme, and of course the last man standing. A special thanks to those who organise these fundraising events, especially the incredible Lee Davis and Lucas Berquist. To all who stand by us both on and off the field, we are truly grateful. If you wish to sponsor the show, please contact me at chairman.skemutdfc@gmail.com or call me on 07766 054 548. All proceeds will go to Skelmersdale United Football Club. Thank you for your unwavering support. Hello and welcome to the third and final part of the Speaking Frankly Football Show, where we delve into this expert analysis from AJ and myself. And we predict, of course, the results for the week ahead.
Yes, we do.
Now, listen, we always start with the Northwest Counties Premier Division.
Certainly do.
And I was just going to say, bizarrely, Ramsbottom, they haven't got a game this weekend despite playing one game less than Bury. Bury play strugglers South Liverpool and could stretch their lead to the 7 points over the Rams.
Yep.
Chadderton are forced into playing 2 games within 48 hours due to Lower Breck having played only 34 games, 3 less than most teams. And like I say, more bizarrely, Lower Breck now have a free Saturday. Question for the fixture secretary.
That's very unusual, that one. I mean, I know Lower Breck have their midweek selection game is on a Thursday, but you would hope that would not be to the detriment of Chadderton, and yet so it's proved. So they've got 2 massive games. Firstly, to visit to Lower Breck on Thursday night, which will be yesterday, but then they've got to face a quite revitalised Longridge Town.
So there really is a big... Listen, we try to shine as much positive light on the Northwest Counties, and listen, we don't even get a retweet for our efforts.
No,
so what we don't try
like
to do is we don't try to deliberately criticise the league either. And listen, these views are entirely of the show and not of the football club itself.
Nope.
But we have questioned we understand the reasons behind the fixture list and the fact that we played an awful lot of games early on in the season to prevent games from getting called off.
Yep.
Or to take into account games that might get called off in the more inclement weather. We understand that, but yet again, we're going to be playing a Tuesday night game, and we've had how many free Saturdays?
Oh, goodness me, about 4, 5, 6, 7, 19, something like that one since the start of the season. We've had a lot, and we've got another one coming up tomorrow. So
you've definitely got to, whether you like it or not, any sane person has got to question. There's got to be a better way of arranging these fixtures. There just has. And of course, I say this because it's an absolute fact. What we do is we find, in terms of trying to find training slots, it's almost impossible because these are taken up before the season starts. So in terms of trying to get additional training at this stage of the season, it's almost impossible. In the end, we call for friendlies, and we're fortunate, and we'll come to the friendly we've got against Darwin this weekend, but. It's a costly exercise as well because you go from training an hour and a half, to playing a full 90-minute game of football on a facility that costs far more money than it would cost you because then you've got to have a referee and linesman as well. Yeah. So, like I say, my question is, how can it get better? I mean, surely there must be a way. Yeah. But
so if anyone from the league wants to let us know. Or give us some guidance on why it is what it is.
Yeah, don't give me a rap on the knuckles for being a naughty boy. Just try and explain to me what's
asking.
What. So I can understand. That's all we want. Want to understand if there's a better way.
Please.
Yeah. So you talk about the fixtures tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So
which is
Lower Breck
last night.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're listening to this on Friday night, which you absolutely will be, because our editorial skills are not that rapid, you will know the outcome of the Lower Breck versus Chadderton result. But
I can't predict that one, to be perfectly honest with you, because both teams. Lower Breck surprised me in the cup. But Chadderton are topsy-turvy as well, and I don't think they've particularly... I think they'll be looking at it now and thinking to themselves, it's a playoff place for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I think...
at best,
I think you're being pragmatic to
16
suggest...
points behind now, aren't they?
They are 16 points behind. Bury have hit a rich vein of form, and Chadderton has... it's been quite well documented that their fall off the form table's been coming for a while. So I think if they manage to make the playoff places, they'll consider this a job well done. I don't think they'll beat Lower Breck, though. No. I think Lower Breck will win this one, so it's a home win.
Yeah, I'm going for Lower Breck as well.
And it will be a home win on Friday night. tonight, if you like, when Winsford United are at home to Shawbury United. Now, I know Shawbury have had some brilliant results of late, including that wonderful wonderful draw against Stafford. And they've followed that up, by taking the game to the last minutes in recent times as well. But I think Winsford are just sort of going to be too strong for them here.
Listen, we've agreed on both points, Lower Breck and Winsford, for both games there. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yep. So we'll now move on to the Saturday fixtures within the Premier Division. So there is 1 2 o'clock kickoff, 1 4 o'clock kickoff, and 1 6 o'clock kickoff, and then the rest are all threes. So I'll tell you where we're going to start, Frank. We're going to start from the ground up stadium, where Citadel Town take on Brodie's Glossop North End.
Yeah. Listen, we know that the form of Glossop has been quite indifferent.
Yes.
Cheadle, they're doing particularly well at the moment, aren't they? They've got 5 wins, 1 defeat in the last 6 games, so they're up there third in the
form table.
The form table, and under normal circumstances, it would go with Glossop. I think Richard would be really, really keen to get back to winning ways there. But it's going to be a tough game for them.
It really is going to be a tough game. Yeah. So the odds are looking sort of reasonably favourable in that their away record is actually a little bit better than their home form.
Cheadle are so hard to score against at the moment.
Cheadle are really difficult to score against. So if we look at Cheadle's goal differences, so they've conceded only 18 goals at home, which is bettered only by Ramsbottom and Lower Breck.
More worryingly, they've only conceded 3 in the last 6 games.
Yeah, which makes it all the more difficult for Brodie. So I would have said a draw initially, but I am going to say that's a home win. Sorry, Richard.
I'm going to go with Glossop, but I think it's going to be a really, really tight game, and I think there'll be a sending off or 2 in that one. I don't know why. I just got this feeling. I've not looked at the disciplinary table.
Well, no.
I think that will be a really, really competitive game.
Yes.
In fact, I think it'll be one of the games in the Premier Division that, if I wasn't going anywhere else this weekend, I'd probably go to Cheadle.
Yeah, to have a little watch of that one.
Yeah.
So we'll now move on to the 3 o'clock. So we're going to start with Abbey Hay at home to Squires Gate.
Yeah, well, listen, if it's anything to do with form, an odd one really, because Squires Gate have drawn the last 3 games.
Abbey Hay have won their last 2.
Yeah, so it's got the hallmarks of a draw in many ways.
You would think so, wouldn't you? I'm still seeing this little run by Squires Gate as a bit of a false dawn, and I think Abbey Hay had probably put them in their place there. So
I'm going for my first draw of the day. I'm going for a draw.
Fine, I'm gonna say a home win there.
Right, so AFC Liverpool versus Prestwich Hayes.
Now, here I am going to say a draw. For some reason, I think Prestwich Hayes have a bit more fighting spirit about them than what we deem Squires Gate to have. Whereas AFC Liverpool, bit topsy-turvy. See, no win in the last three games, and they are leaking goals a little bit. So I will say a draw there.
Yes, I don't know, Prestwich Hayes. Listen, they're certainly decent form at the moment, haven't they?
Yes.
Prestwich Hayes.
Yes.
AFC Liverpool, topsy-turvy. It's got the hallmarks of a draw, but you know what? I'm going to go for Prestwich Hayes.
All right, then.
Because if we all go the same, then one of us will... we'll draw, and I want one of us to win.
Fine.
At least one of us.
Okay.
Barnoldswick Town versus Stockport Town.
So for me, that's Barnoldswick. They've had a revitalised run of form recently with, they're unbeaten in the last 4 games, and they've, won 4 of the last 6. Which takes into account some really, really positive results, including that win at Paddingham. So against a Stockport Town team who are kind of, middle of the park, if you like, so they're 10th in the overall standings, and 8th in the form standings. I'm just seeing Barnoldswick having a bit too much class. So for me, that's a home win.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing very much similar form in the table, and I'm going for a draw. Going for a draw.
FC St Helens against Padiham. So this is really interesting, this one, because I would have said Padiham to win this one once upon a time and win by a bit.
But they've only won one game in the last 6.
They've only won one in the last 6, not scoring a lot, not conceding a whole heap either. I'm going to say a draw here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go for Padiham because I think, if they've got any aspirations to stay in that, to get back in that playoff position, I think they'll be pulling out all the stops, and it's getting closer to the end of the season.
It is.
So I'm going to go for Padiham on that one.
Yeah. Earlham against Burscough.
Well, Dave Dempsey doesn't seem to have a great deal of faith. I say that, and I might be wrong, but he's certainly disappointed over the weekend with their draw. Expecting to win that one. Earlham's a tough place to go.
Always is, and particularly when Earlham are occupying that final playoff spot right now, and they are unbeaten in the last 6 games. Scoring quite a few as well. So I'll be saying a home win there.
I'd love to see Burscough win, but I can't see it.
Not right now.
Earlham, like we say, second in the form table. It's got Earlham written all over it. But you know what? Burscough win that, and the turn of fortune, and then they can finish off the season with a flurry. But I'm going for Earlham.
Very well. Okay, Litherland Remica against Charnock Richard. This is a weird one, because both of these teams are just coming out with madly inconsistent results. So Litherland Remica are sort of without a win in the last 3 games, and they have lost 4 of the last 6. But Charnock Richard, they've won 2 of their last 6, but have conceded goals like they're going out of business. 15 in their last 6 games, which is the 3rd worst in the entire table, despite them being 12th, quite steadily middle of the park. I think we thought they might have aspirations for the playoffs at one point, but right now I think they'll be happy with top 10. But against Remica, who pulling off quite a couple of decent results of late.
I'm going to go for Litherland. I just think on their own home turf, they're a tough team to beat down. Bunch of Scousers, typical, hard-working football team, the home advantage. Yeah. I'm going to go for Litherland.
Litherland, okay. My faith is still with Charnock Richard, but only just. I think they need to sort this out sooner rather than later, really. They had a really good result against Mughal in the Cup, so I would hope that they would carry that on. So, away win for me.
There's nothing on it, really, is there? Because,
not really.
Charnock haven't got any playoff aspirations, and I don't think Litherland are going to get relegated. The 38 points, 13 points ahead of the drop zone. So
yeah, I think like I say, I think Charnock Richard just want to get top 10, whereas Litherland and Remica just want to get away from the bottom as much as they possibly can.
So moving on to South Liverpool versus Bury. This is an opportunity for Bury to increase their lead at the top with Ramsbottom not playing.
No.
I can't see anything. They got battered 6-1 at the weekend in the South Liverpool.
Yes, they did.
So I see a pretty much similar scoreline for Bury.
Yeah, me too. So it's a away win for me.
Yeah. West Didsbury and Chorlton versus Pilkington. Pilkington, bottom of the form table. West Didsbury, indifferent.
Yeah, but I would still have West Didsbury to win that one. They pushed Bury awfully close. So
I'd like to see Pilkington win because we've got a lot of time for them. Great club run by some really nice people as well. So I'll go for, unfortunately, going for West Didsbury in the hope that Pilkington will do the job.
Yeah. So we come to the 4:00 kick-off, which is Chadderton in playing their second game in 48 hours at home to Longridge Town.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, that. So Longridge, very much kind of middle of the park, really. They've 2 wins and a draw in their last 6 games, but are sort of leaking a few goals. Whereas Chadderton still in the playoffs, but not necessarily by virtue of recent form. Just 1 win in the last 6 games. I think we're going to go for a draw here. Yeah, I just think losing.
It's been a difficult season for Chatterton, hasn't it? They've ripped up the pitch. They're getting a synthetic pitch laid.
Yeah.
I think it's more about if they can make the playoffs and do something in the playoffs, then I think it's just making the playoffs is good for them. Next season's a different kettle of fish. I think they'll be making a little bit more money. Might give them an edge in the challenge next season. But I
think so, but I think, like I say, and I've said this since the transfer went through, but I think losing Lewis Byrne to promotion rivals Bury made an enormous difference. He'd scored 34 goals before Christmas. That's silly behaviour, that. And I think that's really affected them. So on this occasion, with Chadderton against Longridge, I'm going to say a draw.
Well, you know what? I've actually gone for a draw myself. Just a question there, though. Why is it a 4 o'clock kickoff? Do we know? It's not like it'll have anything to do with the bulbs, because we're going to be playing in.
You'd play them earlier, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd play earlier.
I don't.
So they're playing at Avro. Which ground is that closest to in Manchester? Manchester.
Absolutely no idea. You would hope that it'd be by virtue of Chadderton having played at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. So having that extra hour.
Well, you know what? That was well spotted. I didn't even think of that. But listen, if anybody is listening, because we want to find out if anybody's listening.
Because we're nosy.
Yeah, we're nosy. But if anybody from Chadderton can explain why you kicked off at, or why you're kicking off at 4 o'clock on Saturday, please do let us know.
Yeah. Then we come to the evening fixture, which traditionally and continuously takes place at the Bowl on the Isle of Man, where FC Isle of Man host Cone.
Now, I would say that FC Isle of Man, they've not really got a great deal to play for, or they don't seem to. The wheels have come off a little bit, which is... but they've still got an outside chance of getting into the playoffs, have they? No, not really.
I wouldn't have said so. They've got 9-point gap to make up on Earlham, who are occupying that final playoff spot, and I don't really see them turning that around in time. They've got 10 games to do it.
So you'd have to say Cone, there's more on this for Cone.
There's an awful lot more of Cone to play for. So Cone, only by virtue of goal difference, are bottom of the table, but any result for them here may take them out of the relegation spots, which are, I believe there's 2 in the Premier Division, isn't there? Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, I would say that they are going to have a draw here.
Right, I'm going to go for Cone. I think Cone might just want it more, and it'll make things really interesting at the bottom of the league.
God, wouldn't it?
So I'm going for an away win by Cone, but it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not.
Any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So we're going to move on to the south before we go north. We always, as we always do.
Yep.
Listen, we forgot to say that at the beginning of the third part of the show. We didn't say thank you to Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. He was an amazing guest, wasn't he?
Lovely guy. Very smart. Very ambitious. Knows his stuff.
Best of luck to him. But listen, 100%. It's ironic now that we're talking about
Abbey Holton.
Abbey Holton. Abbey Holton, considered by Dan to be probably pound for pound the best team in the league.
Step 4 in disguise.
Step 4 in disguise. That's an interesting saying there.
I'm all about interesting sayings, mate. Nothing more.
No.
So Abbey Holton taking on Allscott Heath at the Drayton Beaumont Park, which I think sounds like a stately home more than anything else.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, so will it be a big, rich win for Abbey Holton, or will it be delusions of grandeur? And will Allscott Heath take something out of this one? I don't think so. I think Abbey Holton are going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Abbey Holton. And I think Dan said there, a lot of people not really... they weren't really on anybody's radar, were they, to do anything particularly well?
I don't think they were on ours.
They certainly weren't on ours. And I don't know a great deal about them. I feel as though I should. And as a result of that conversation with Dan, I think I'm going to do my homework a little bit on Abbey Holton, because Abbey Holton, predicted by Dan to go up in the playoffs. That'd be an interesting one. But yeah.
Well.
In the meantime, I'm going for Abbey Holton, but I'm gonna do a little bit of digging on them and maybe get somebody on the show from Abbey Holton.
So Barnton taking on Ashville. So both teams have won their last 2 games.
Barnton beat Premier League opposition, didn't they? In the
Lower Breck,
in the cup, so they will be buoyed by their victory there.
They certainly will. Yeah, they are 15th. In the domestic standings though, and still just uncomfortably looking over their shoulder towards those relegation places, particularly when you consider how Shawbury have been getting on in recent games. That being said, Ashville 8th place in the table, so no danger of relegation, but very small possibility of promotion there. As to their recent run of form, unbeaten in the last 4, 9 goals scored, 9 conceded. So, would you say a draw here?
I don't know. It definitely looks like a draw on paper, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does.
But Ashville have, a little bit further up the league.
Plenty further up the league, so I'd probably say an away win here.
Yeah, I'm going for Ashville as well.
There we go. Right, so Camel Lad versus Wolverhampton Sporting Community.
Yeah, I'm going for Camelhead.
Yeah, I'm going for Camel Lad too.
Yep. Cheadle Heath Nomads versus Sandbach. That is.
What's a cracking game, that one? Really?
Yeah, it looks like a cracking game. That
Yeah.
certainly on paper there.
It does.
2 teams in the playoff positions.
Yeah, they are. Cheadle Heath just occupying the final one, whereas Sandbach sitting quite comfortably in 3rd place there. On a bit of a decent run as well. So we look at Sandbach's results of late. They've only lost 1 in their last 6, with the other 5 being wins, and sort of reasonably emphatic ones as well. 12 goals.
Cheadle have lost 3 games on the bounce.
Whereas Cheadle have lost 3 games on the bounce. So are they having a late stage wobble just outside the playoffs?
No, I'm going for Sandbach.
I'm going to go for Sandbach too.
Market Drayton Town versus Stockport Georgians.
Yeah, so as we said in part 2, it was identified that Market Drayton beat Stockport Georgians 5-1 back in August, but I think it's fair to say that things aren't exactly the same as what they were 7 or 8 months ago. So Stockport Georgians did win their last game, but weren't on a particularly fantastic run of form before that, whereas Market Drayton Town lost 3 games before their draw last weekend. Also sort of leaking more goals than they would have liked. An average of little over 2 a game. My money would be on a draw here.
I'm going for Market Drayton purely down to the fact that they've managed to, at certain stages of the season, they've managed to put little mini runs in. Yeah. Enough to sort of impress on the eye. They had that draw against Runcorn away from home, which was a good one. They had a penalty appeal turned down late on in the game. They could have won that. Played on heavy conditions, but they're back on home turf, so I'm going to go for Market Drayton.
Alrighty then.
Stafford Town versus Foley Mere can only see one result here, and that's Stafford.
Point staying at home.
And they can obviously reduce the arrears between them and Winsford with a win. So I think that's definitely Stafford.
Yeah, particularly helpful when Winsford aren't in action this weekend.
Yeah, so that moves us on to the Division 1 North. I think it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Right, so Ashton Athletic versus Holker Old Boys.
I can only really see that result going one way. Ashton Athletic are just wretchedly out of form at the minute. They might have Deck Hill scoring the goals for them, but their defence is nothing to be,
right home about.
Nothing to be written on. So Holker Old Boys for the win there.
Yeah, AFC Blackpool versus Ashton Town. I know Ashton Town have had a decent run of late.
Yeah, managed to sort of patch a little bit of form together, but I think AFC Blackpool will be buoyed by their by the win at the weekend, and particularly the manner of how the first 3 quarters of the game went. And I think they'll have enough steel within them to hold off Ashton Town. So that is going to be a home win for me there.
Yes, I think I'll go along with you there. Definitely home win, yeah.
Yep. And this then brings us to the big one of the day.
Home win. Oh yeah.
I said
home win.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely home win. Yeah.
So the big fixture
it's huge, this one,
is second place Atherton LR versus first place Nelson at Crilly Park, or the Safe Gas UK Stadium to give their sponsored name.
Yeah.
So Atherton LR long led the division, but owing to cup games and other commitments, found themselves dropping into second place at the expense of Nelson. There is 3 games that Atherton LR still have to play to cover Nelson's advantage. There is only 4 points between them. Now, home advantage counts for an awful lot, I think. Now, I think Davy Jones will have looked at that result against Exton Villa, and I think he will have found a lot of reason to feel like, a lot of improvements to be made there, a lot. And particularly when you have to address that Charlie Frost for Nelson is on such a rich run of form that he'll look at him as being the particular danger man of that squad. I want to hope that Davy Jones will have done an awful lot of homework on this game.
Yeah, but this is a pivotal game in the season now, isn't it? Because I know that they've got that 3-game advantage. This is very much a 6-pointer. Yes. There's a 4-point gap. If Atherton lose it, it becomes a 7-point gap with only 2 games. Still with the 3 games, rather.
But only 2 points if Atherton take full advantage, and that's, not a particularly nice place to be.
Do you think it's a must-win for Atherton in terms of psychology?
Yeah.
Psychologically, I think.
Psychologically speaking, yes, I do.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I hope they win.
You've got to challenge the teams at the top if you're going to win promotion.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm going for Atherton LR.
So am I.
Which moves us on to Bacup Borough versus Droylsden.
I can
only see 1 win there.
Yeah, and that's an away win. Yeah.
Route 1 Rovers versus Exton Villa.
Pretty straightforward there too.
Exton Villa. And just looking briefly into next week's fixtures, there's a few of them. Longridge versus Stockport Town on the Tuesday night.
But then the Burnley derby, Padiham versus Cone. Now that'll be really interesting, particularly shaped on how both teams play at the weekend. Obviously Padiham in a bit of an indifferent run of form, whereas Cone just trying to get each game, trying to get something from each game. So that'll be one to really, really look at.
I'm going to go for Padiham on that one. I think there's going to be a huge gate there, a relatively big gate for them.
Yeah.
I think Stockport will do the business against Longridge Town.
Yeah.
And then you've got Stafford Town in the Southern Division against Ashville. I think Stafford will win that to keep it interesting at the top. Wednesday, the 26th of February, Litherland versus West Didsbury. Purely based on the fact that they're playing at home, I'm going to go to Litherland. Sorry, I haven't followed you on these ones. Are you?
So for me, I'm going to say Longridge and Stockport are going to contest a draw. Padiham are going to win against Cone in the Burnley derby. Stafford are going to beat Ashville, so home win there. And then Remica versus WD&C, I'm saying a draw.
Yeah, fair shout. And then the final game of that week will be Lower Breck versus Prescott Cables in the quarterfinals of the Liverpool Senior Cup.
Away win for me.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what kind of team they feel, but yeah, I'll certainly go along with that.
There you go.
So that wraps up the expert analysis and predictions.
Yes, we use that term loosely.
Yeah, and almost becomes a wrap for our 16th episode.
Very much so.
And we get to that part where, and I don't think about this, I never think about the answer.
Me neither.
I always think about the question, but what have we learned this week? What have you learned this week?
I have learned that social media can play an enormous part in a team's fortunes, both positive and negative and potential. And I think if it's done the right way, it could very much lead to a very long period of prosperity for a club at our level. Not necessarily on the pitch, but off the pitch. If it's handled in the right way, then it could absolutely be securing a club's future for the long term. If it's not done correctly, however, it could quite easily lead to the downfall and evisceration of a club.
Yeah, I mean, what have I learned? I've learned a couple of things. Certainly learned one thing off Dan when we were talking to him there. We've talked a lot about the psychology, players, teams, and statistics that surround it. And I think we've said it before. We take this current team of Skelmersdale United Football Club, you put them back there to the beginning of August. They don't get relegated. But very difficult to back that argument up when you're still losing. But we didn't. We won for a change. Yeah. So from that perspective, I think psychology does play a big part, and it's playing such a big part in football these days. And I think that's the reason why the managers are getting younger, because they're studying the psychology of the game. And I think sometimes when you're too involved with football in terms of being a player, you look at Kevin Phillips, ex-Premier League footballer, you look at the likes of Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard's getting back into football now, Wayne Rooney, people like that. It doesn't always work for them. I think a lot of these younger managers now look into the psychology of football. So from that perspective, I've learned that psychology plays a big part in football. And right now, I think if we can build upon what we've done in against who did we just play? Garstang. It's been a long show. Against Garstang, we listen. I know it was bottom of the division game, the bottom two teams in the division, but I like I said before, I'm making no apologies for celebrating a win. Because when it's been such a tough season, and most of the time you've been crying into your pint at the end of the night, it was so refreshing to see so many happy faces. So I've learned that psychology plays a big part in football, and I've also learned that you have to celebrate each and every moment of joy.
100%.
And listen, I'll leave just to remind anybody before I do, if anybody wants to go along to Darwin on Saturday, we're playing them in a friendly. It's a 2 o'clock kickoff at Darwin, so you're more than welcome there. There's no admission, but there's a bar and there's food available. Lovely little stadium as well. The
Multivo Anchor Ground, one of my favourite stadiums to go to.
Yeah, and thank you very much to Leighton Mills for setting up that friendly as well. Much appreciated. As usual, I will leave the final words to AJ.
You've been listening to the Speaking Frankly Football Show with myself, AJ Vajat, and my co-host on the show, Mr. Frank Hughes. This podcast is available to you on Spotify, Amazon Music, and other environments where you can get your podcasts from. Please remember to like and review and subscribe so that you can be the first to find out when another episode of the Speaking Frankly Football Show has been released. Please also feel free to review us and rate us, because we do really enjoy hearing feedback. We are also available on X and on Facebook under the banner Speaking Frankly. And you will hear from us again next week when we return for the 17th episode of the Speaking Frankly Football Show. Until then, bye-bye for now.